at that, isn't that great? Welcome, everyone, for our Thursday, I think it's our third session, maybe our fourth, I forget, our third session of the Lane County Budget Committee, so I'll call it to order. And I assume our first part of committee business will be approving the minutes, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the minutes from May 7th.
They look reasonable.
Oh, these were just handed out today.
Yeah, they were just handed out.
Do we need time to read them?
If you just received them today and you
We
want
did,
to-
I guess.
They
we
were
did
just
do
on
that.
our.
Okay, so we'll do that
Sometimes
next
they're
time.
emailed ahead of time, but if you didn't see that, that's fine.
Okay.
I did not.
We can wait.
Okay, we'll do that next time. Thank you. Right, is there any other committee business that we need to do, Kristen?
There's not.
There is not. But I always have the wrong flipping calendar in front of me. You always give us the one for the next week, and so I have the wrong one. I got to get in order. There we go. Well, then I think Sheriff Harold, I think you are up. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Chair Weber, Budget Committee. I'm just going to do a really short introduction and then turn this over. Chief Deputy Wilkerson gathered the team up and they put together a presentation for you, so credit goes to them. Some of the information, of course, many of you have heard before. And we hate to be repetitive, but also as the sheriff, I'm obligated to continue to elevate the challenges of the office, which are budget. So you'll hear some information that you've heard before, but we've got to keep putting that forward here, and then for whatever public are viewing it, keep that message forward. The other thing that you've heard from me before is we're pretty intentional about our career development within our organization, and oftentimes we use the Budget Committee presentation as one of those opportunities for career development. As folks grow in our organization, obviously I'm not thinking most of the deputy sheriffs are paying a whole lot of attention to budget, other than occasionally I give them a little bit of information. But then when we promote folks through sergeant and lieutenant and have them participate in all of this, it really helps elevate the perspective for them across the organization. So you'll see a couple fresh faces, and I'll point out these two lieutenants right behind me, Ryan Wells and Tom Spelgridge, are the newest lieutenants in our organization. So they'll be presenters. And then Greg Rice, who is our acting jail commander upon the retirement of Greg. So with that, I'll do my 2 slides. That's our mission. And next one is, we're broken up into 4 divisions, but 1 division is just the elected office of sheriff and administrator, and there's no real changes there. So I'll turn it over to the presenters.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Budget Committee. I'm Lieutenant Ryan Wells, and start things off, pretty simple. Sheriff's Office has a complex budget, and we'll be breaking that down for you here throughout the slides. This is a county-provided budget graph breakdown of the Sheriff's Office revenue, followed up by a county-provided budget graph for the Sheriff's Office expenses. I'm part of the Operations Support Division, and the Operations Support Division provides services to all aspects of the public safety community. As you can see, operations support encompasses a large range of positions and is a vital part of the Sheriff's Office. And with only 46 FTE to complete all those jobs listed, this requires great teamwork, and many of those FTE being able to do multiple positions all while doing it potentially different positions in the same day, which makes it a vital position as well as roles for our personnel. Some of the changes for the upcoming years, our dispatch center has added 3 more contracts for their services. With these additional dispatch contracts, they have pretty much maxed out their ability to provide additional dispatching services without adding more FTE. One of the new contracts is for DYS field units. Prior to DYS getting this contract with dispatch, they were using a whiteboard to communicate with fellow co-workers. This meant if they were going to a location with no cell service, they had no way to communicate or ask for help other than waiting for their estimated return time to lapse and then for people to start looking into if they were in any trouble. So adding this dispatch service provided by the Sheriff's Office for DYS is making their job safer by having a lifeline now via radio. Some of our key initiatives especially in the Operations Support Division. Radio is a huge one right now with the House Bill 5202 grant funding. We have approximately 5 projects in progress right now. We also received some FEMA grant money that was just awarded to install hybrid power systems at Prairie and Harness radio sites to increase our backup power ability. Some of the reasons why this is such a vital importance, we can look just back to the ice storm in January of how close we were to losing complete radio communications for the county, the city of Eugene, the city of Springfield, as well as some of our state partners. One of our radio sites generator failed, went to battery backup, and if it wasn't for the quick reaction of our radio technician to recognize this issue and to get the fix in place, the entire county would have lost radio communication, which would have devastated our response to the community members in our area. So this is why it's so fragile and important that we're investing in our radio system. Our recruitment and retention is another key initiative. As always, this fiscal year, the Sheriff's Office has hired 27 new employees to fill open positions. However, during the same period of time, we've had 34 retirements or separations. So as you can see, it's a constant battle for recruitment and retention. Our health and wellness is a vital part of us now as we're recognizing the importance of it. So approximately 2 years ago, the Sheriff's Office executive team met with members of the volunteer group Thin Blue Line Coalition with the goal to develop a strategy for supporting an overall healthier staff. Using the 4 major pillars of wellness, financial, spiritual, mental, and physical health as a guideline, the goal was to provide our staff with enough resources to retire as healthy or healthier than the day they were hired. We have a very stringent hiring process, and we hire really excellent people, but recognize that this work can take a toll on someone's overall health. The Sheriff's Office created the Health and Wellness Committee and surveyed staff on what would help better achieve our goals. One of the primary requests was to have an easy-to-access and secure location to engage in personal wellness. The Sheriff's Office then worked with the Capital Projects team and identified an unused space near the jail to house the Health and Wellness Center, or known as the HAWC. Both staff and community volunteers, to include people from the Thin Blue Line Coalition and New Hope West Church, began the work to turn the goal of a HAWC into reality. Currently, there is ample space and equipment for fitness, and we are currently developing spaces for meditation, peer support, and resource rooms. The Health and Wellness Committee has also provided staff with trainings and briefings led by volunteers in a variety of wellness areas to include financial planning, sleep hygiene, fitness, mental health first aid, and nutrition. The Sheriff's Office will continue to seek funding opportunities to further develop this program. Some of the challenges that we are facing is our workload outpacing staff increases. The Oregon Public Records Law was enacted in 1973, and then in 2017 there was a major overhaul with a few bills that were enacted. One of those impacts was that they created a state-appointed public records advocate, as well as established strict timelines and monetary penalties enforced for not meeting those deadlines. Going back to 2020, we've received 2,101 public records requests, and since that year, it has steadily increased to the point where, as of last year, there was over 4,000 public records requests, and we're on pace this year for over 4,500 public records requests. In those years, public records requests for cases containing a massive volume of material have increased. While the number and volume of these requests have increased, available staff to process them has not. In November 2022, police records received a request from the media for the entire case file of a 1977 homicide. All records were paper copies, which were typed or handwritten. All photos from the cases were on negatives. This required over 1,000 pages to be reviewed for redaction, scanned into our RM records management system, and required that all negatives be converted into digital images. Due to staffing constraints and other mandated work that also has deadlines, this request took over 8 months to complete and required the time of multiple staff members. As of this time, there are other pending homicide cases that will require just about the same amount of time. Now going into one of the other issues that is our dysfunctional office space. One of the biggest issues the sheriff's office faces is how inefficient our work area is in the public service building. The area we work out of was never designed to be a sheriff's office, and safety is a major concern with our current layout. We have a public corridor that splits our office and creates issues for staff. We have no water on one side of that public corridor, which means no restrooms easily available for those staff members. This has led to times when individuals that need to use the restroom or cross the hallway have had to wait because there is a situation in the public corridor that is unsafe for them to walk across. Another area is our dispatch center. It's located right off the public corridor, which also has a glass window next to an emergency exit for them. This doesn't meet the best practice standards for the dispatch centers. Then along with all the modifications that have been done to our layout over the years, it has created dead space and the inability to function properly with the needs and requirements of the community. And then one of the final things is some things that are out of our control, which are cost increases as listed above. Those are areas that are going up for everyone, but for us it affects us very much as well. And now I'll pass it to Lieutenant Tom Speldridge.
Thanks, Ryan. Chair, committee, thank you. So the Police Services Division is where I work. Essentially, the Police Services Division, we serve as the law enforcement branch of the Sheriff's Office. We are the primary police agency for all of the unincorporated residents and then also residents in the cities that we contract with, such as Cresswell and Bonita. Our patrol division, our main office patrol call response, we're currently budgeted for 30 deputies. That doesn't include their shift supervisors. 5 of those positions, though, however, are on limited duration funding, Secure Rural Schools funding. So also we're required by statute to provide search and rescue services in Lane County. We have to serve the papers for the civil courts. We do have a detective division that consists of currently 5 plus their supervisor, and also we're going to talk about a new position that we have been able to a critical position that we've been able to create with some reallocation of current resources. But you can see out of 74 employees, I mentioned that 30 are main office patrol. Out of the 74 employees that we have FTE in the Police Services Division as far as sworn employees, about half of them are contract assignments that we have with various entities, such as we provide the police service 4 deputies and a sergeant for Cresswell. We've got 4 deputies and half of an FTE sergeant for the cities of Bonita. They pay for those positions. And we also have contracts with BLM, 2 deputies that patrol BLM land on contract. Private Timber has contracted, they've united and funded a deputy to patrol their areas. We also have contracts with, for instance, Public Works for motor carrier enforcement. State Parks pays for dune patrol. And then we also have on limited duration funding also that's set to expire here soon. We've got 2 deputies that patrol West Lane, which is kind of considered west of Walton, which is a pretty big area. It can take a long time to get there if they're waiting for police services to come all the way here from the valley. And then also up McKenzie, we have 2 deputies, and those guys are on limited duration funding as well. All right, so we talk about that reallocation. Let me flip my notes, or looks like they fell out of order. That reallocation, we've been able to, utilizing resources we have in the office and basically recreating some positioning, we're able to finally staff police services lieutenant, another police services lieutenant. Hello, hi, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. And then also, I think even very critically, more critically, it should be noted that as times change, so must law enforcement personnel and the things that we're trained and able to do. Everybody right now probably in their pocket has a piece of evidence that could be very helpful in criminal investigations. Everybody carries a cell phone. And when I started this career, nobody carried a cell phone. Now everybody does. And so to have somebody that's trained to be able to extract the information that's in those cell phones on the different crimes that are being investigated, both victims' phones and also suspect phones, it is basically the standard these days. And there's a lot of case law, there's a lot of training, there's a lot of complicated software, hardware stuff needed to properly be able to use that evidence so that it's admissible in court. We needed a specialist, and we needed one bad. And we have one now due to realigning some positions so that we're able to have a digital forensics detective. Okay, moving forward here, our grant-funded illegal marijuana market enforcement team does continue to take down large-scale criminal organizations in an effort to keep our counties safer. Very commonly, these operations result in the seizure of not only illegal marijuana, but large quantities of hard drugs such as fentanyl and meth. These criminal operations are not only responsible for the marijuana manufacture and distribution, but also many of the dangerous hard drugs that are plaguing our streets right now. Detectives have discovered many substantial health and environmental violations, but also, unfortunately, uncovered evidence of human trafficking in several of these operations that they're working. There's a picture on the bottom right there. So to further combat the dangerous drug epidemic, the team recently welcomed a new addition to the family. Bear is a 2-year-old German Shepherd trained in drug detection. He's trained to locate, in addition to other illegal drugs, fentanyl specifically. He looks intimidating. Don't be fooled. He's a big baby, and he's addicted to work. The minute that he's let out of his kennel, he is hunting for the drugs that are hurting our community so badly. And he's a good boy.
How's his bite?
All right, thanks. So I had mentioned earlier that we provide police services to roughly 119,000 of the residents here in Lane County. The fact remains that we are understaffed compared to other counties in Oregon. Our average ratio of deputies per 1,000 is 0.19. Our 5 comparator counties, when averaged together, is 0.40. So we're like less than half, I guess not like, we are less than half of what our comparator average is. We would need 75 more enforcement deputies in our police services division just to match our comparators. And to further that even more, our comparators in the state were below that average by half. Oregon is also less by quite a bit than the national average. You see those spikes, by the way, of those call counties? If you trace down and look to see where those counties are that have a high deputy to citizen ratio, those are tiny counties that usually have less than 3,000 in population, so it only takes a small handful of deputies for them to be able to bump those averages way up. So they're kind of like outliers in that data set there. All right. So, unfortunately, Lane County remains a statewide leader for traffic-related fatalities in our state, and preliminary data shows that there were 42 fatalities involving 39 different fatal crashes in Lane County just last year. Often narrow, curved, shoulderless, and high-end speed limit, our rural roadways offer conditions very susceptible to dangerous traffic crashes, and when we couple these factors with our society's increases in impaired driving, and a near complete lack of traffic safety enforcement, our rural roadways are the perfect recipe for fatal crashes. So it should be noted, I know it's been said in here before, it's long been understood that effective traffic safety relies on 3 pillars, and those are education, engineering, and enforcement. We definitely lack the enforcement pillar, and the results are apparent. You know, we do get some grant monies filtered through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and Oregon Department of Transportation that help us with some small, small targeted holiday, specific weekend event type of enforcement. But that money is pretty thin and it's spread throughout all of the agencies across Oregon, and it doesn't allow for us to have any dedicated traffic safety enforcement. That's just, really a Band-Aid for the problem on big weekends that we are trying our best to utilize. The Lane County Sheriff's Office is also, I had mentioned, the de facto law enforcement agency for all of unincorporated Lane County. As such, our resources are often called upon by mutual aid requests from the other agencies. Anytime that the scale or severity of an incident exceeds their limitations, they'll ask for help. And just a recent example of this was on April 15th. A large contingency of protesters brought the southbound lanes of I-5 in Eugene to a screeching halt by blocking all the lanes of travel with vehicles and bodies. Overwhelmed by the resources required to handle such a situation, the Oregon State Police did request emergency assistance from area agencies that included us, Eugene, Springfield. We all worked together, and despite 61 arrests having to have been made, which is a huge undertaking, by the way, there's lots of logistics in that. 61 arrests, we were able to get, despite what the news might tell you, we were able to get the highway open within an hour. That's a lot of cooperation to make that happen. Okay, this incident serves as just one of the countless examples of great relationships that we share with our other partner agencies here locally. I would like to go and say that the growth of our county has also resulted in an increased workload for law enforcement agencies, and particularly us. Recently, I'm gonna, I guess, a little story time, quick story time. I'm gonna tell you just kind of about something that happened the last couple of weeks, and it's not too typical for us to be busy like this. On April 23rd, about 2:30 p.m., deputies responded to a report from the Oregon State Police that they were in pursuit of an Amber Alert suspect from Washington State. Our staff, we already knew and were watching for this double murder suspect, as it did seem likely, given intelligence, that he may pass through our county with a kidnapped young child with him. And given the nature of the call, nearly every deputy on duty, including detectives and even administrative staff, I went out there, of course, began to set up along the I-5 corridor to try and intercept this vehicle with spike strips and whatever else we could do to get it stopped. Okay. You're aware I fell off here. With spike strips. Yeah, and the other partner agencies, Eugene, Springfield, everybody was trying to get to I-5. This was a big deal. Eventually the vehicle became disabled, and the bad guy continued his threat to society by shooting on I-5, crowded I-5, shooting at the troopers. And eventually they were able to, the vehicle stopped again, and they were able to, despite the dangers of it, deputies right there on scene along with troopers approached the vehicle and were able to take the child out. Unfortunately, the guy had taken his life, but they didn't know that at the time that they walked up and got the child out of the car. This was a very critical incident. Very stressful for everybody involved, and it took a significant amount of resources. As such, Oregon State Police then asked if we could help them conduct the death investigation portion of this case. So our detectives and patrol deputies on scene there made the transition from that type of response to the critical incident to all of a sudden now we're conducting an investigation on this Amber Alert double homicide suspect. So our detectives worked on that well into the night, and early the next morning, only hours after the last detective left, by the way, they weren't done with their reports. They just got the work done needed so they could go home and grab a nap, right? Only hours after the last detective left, dispatch received a report of a deceased female at a residence out on Highway 36, unrelated. Patrol deputies, some of whom had been part of the kidnapping call the day before, responded, and detectives, also who had been out on I-5 the day before, responded. And they discovered that a female had suffered a gunshot wound, and it appeared that it was probably at the hands of her boyfriend, who was no longer on scene. The detectives were able to obtain a warrant for him for arrest with murder, and they started working to try to locate where he was at. Just 3 o'clock this same day, now only a few hours later, a second shooting was reported at a residence in Santa Clara. Deputies learned that a 37-year-old female had been shot during a dispute, and she died as a result of her injuries. The shooter had also fled the scene in this one, was identified and located with help of the Eugene Police Department at an apartment complex not far from Valley River Center. So we're 24 hours in now, and we've got these 3 very large critical incidents. We worked these different scenes. We still had deputies out on Highway 36. We still had deputies now in Santa Clara, and now also by Valley River Center. So we're getting pretty spread thin here at this point. Okay. Next day, let's fast forward to the next day, April 25th. While investigating an assault that occurred at a residence on Prairie Road, a deputy was struck in the face multiple times by an assault suspect who also tried to take away her taser. The suspect also attempted to take away the second deputy's firearm. There was a cover deputy there, thankfully. Fortunately, these deputies were able to overpower him and take him into custody without anybody sustaining serious injury. It should be noted that both of these deputies had also responded to the 3 previously mentioned calls. And both of those deputies had also responded to the I-5 protest as well. So I guess the point of what I'm telling you is our minimum staffing level for patrol, it does remain at 3 deputies and a shift supervisor. And these staffing numbers mean that our deputies often respond call to call to call to call and rarely get the time or opportunity to recuperate or decompress. Okay. It also means that the same deputies are often required to respond to life safety, emergency, and critical calls for multiple service calls in a single shift. So that can take a toll. I am so proud of our folks. On a side note, they're just amazing, and they work harder than anybody I've ever known in my life. Moving to the last slide here that I've got for you. You know, I had mentioned we've got the 4 district deputy positions, 2 East Lane, and 2 West Lane, 2 McKenzie. Sometimes I refer to them as East Lane. Those are limited duration funding, and that's only going to go through June of 2025. It would be detrimental to those communities if those district deputies were not available to them anymore. Additionally, 8 additional patrol detective positions with funding expected to run out partially through fiscal year 28. That's the 5 that I talked about in patrol, and then we've got the detective positions that we were able to add with the SRS add-on. That's just going through fiscal year 28. We rely on those just to keep that minimum 3 patrol deputy staffing. Some things that we don't have control over here in the police services division, cars for everybody get expensive. Police cars are particularly expensive, and getting them outfitted, they're getting more expensive. And then also we received grant funding, 5-year limited duration funding, so that we could get a body-worn camera program up and running, which is pretty much the industry standard now. We're pretty much required by society to have that. And the funding got us started for 5 years, but we have to put away money now. We're budgeting money now so that we can keep that program running when the 5 years expires. And so that's something that we're considering also. Okay. If we lost, I'd mentioned those limited duration fundings, the 4 district deputies plus the 8 that are in police services, that would reduce our, elimination of these positions would reduce us quite a bit, by 16%, and that would bring us down from that 0.19, that's half of the statewide average, bring us down to 0.16. So that's pretty substantial. Again, I'd like to close with how proud I am of the folks that I work with. Thank you. I'm going to pass it on now to our acting jail commander, Captain Greg Rice.
Chair Committee, thank you for your time. As Tom said, I'm stuck in the chair. Keep these chairs. Sorry. So I'm Greg Rice. It's my privilege to be the acting jail commander, and I get to talk to you all about the Corrections Division today. All right. So the purpose of the Lane County Sheriff's Corrections Division is to protect the community by providing a safe environment to incarcerate and supervise pretrial criminal defendants and sentenced offenders. The sections of the division include security alternative programs. The security section includes our 411-bed jail, and our 2 main contracts is our medical and mental health contract provided by WellPath, and our kitchen laundry service provided by the Trinity Service Group. The alternative program section is managed out of our Offender Management Center. You also will hear us call it the DOMC, which is adjacent to the jail. The programs there are the electronic monitoring program, the sheriff's work crew, the community service program, and our sit-in program. All right. So reduced Community Corrections Act funding from the state resulted in the loss of 3 FTE, 2 deputy sheriff positions, and 1 record supervisor. Now that staff have access to paid leave Oregon, the decrease of our 2 FTE deputy positions complicates the process of accommodating the additional leave benefits provided by the state that staff are entitled to. Since September, 4,897 hours of PLO has been utilized just by our deputy staff. This equates to an average of nearly 4 employees being absent from work every month. So those 2 hits, deputy reductions, really hurt us covering that stuff. The reduced general fund allocation and the proposed budget results in additional loss of 2 FTE, 1 records position, and 1 deputy sheriff position in the transport courthouse security program. It is noteworthy that this causes a reduction in deputy sheriff presence in the courthouse during a time that we've also had to reduce the hours of the white shirt courthouse security program, as that program has never received any increase in funding. 1 sergeant position funded ARPA funds is being eliminated. Additionally, a management analysis position is being eliminated. This elimination of these positions is being used to create a lieutenant position that allows us to diversify the duties of the lieutenants to give us a greater leadership and succession planning ability. Research shows that individuals who are able to maintain employment, housing, and community ties are less likely to reoffend. Our alternative programs such as electronic monitoring, work crew, community service, and sit-ins provide individuals the opportunity to maintain those core fundamentals to be productive members of the community while maneuvering through the court system or serving their sentence, while also assisting with the management of the limited jail beds so that these beds are used for higher risk individuals. Alternative programs is a critical component of the justice system that benefits our community in the long run. Court staff that work for pretrial services utilizes an evidence-based risk assessment tool while reviewing pretrial defendants for potential release. Electronic monitoring provides another resource for pretrial services to encourage compliance with release conditions while also increasing community safety. Having the ability to use electronic monitoring for pretrial defendants reduces the utilization of limited jail beds by low-risk defendants. In addition to pretrial services, electronic monitoring has built partnerships with Parole and Probation and Drug Court to provide another avenue to encourage compliance for their programs. As Parole and Probation and Drug Court staff work with a variety of clients, all with different needs, providing them with another tool to encourage success is vital. Work crew and community service offers alternatives to incarceration. Staff work with courts and sentenced offenders to create an achievable means for them to fulfill their individual court requirements. This individualized plan allows participants to maintain their pro-social connections, housing, and work schedules. And so what I mean by that is these individuals will report to the DOMC, talk to staff, and staff are trying to figure out what success looks like for them. So do they have a job? What's their job schedule? Let's not crumple their ability to work and be productive members because they're trying to get this sentence done. So work crew provide parole and probation an alternative sanction option that would otherwise occupy a jail bed while maintaining accountability as well. So currently, there are 102 individuals on electronic monitoring, 124 individuals on work crew, and 150 individuals on community service. So if we didn't have these programs, that would be 376 individuals that either would be occupying a jail bed or would not be held accountable for their actions. In 2021, we developed a medication-assisted treatment, known as MAT, program for those adults in custody that have a substance abuse disorder. This last quarter, we had 79 people on MAT medications. During the last 4 quarters, we had 230 people on MAT medications. There are numerous factors that contribute to why we need MAT in the jail, ranging from American Disability Act requirements, legal ramifications, and the moral obligation to provide help to those we serve. Recently, one of our staff ran into a gentleman who spent 4 months on our MAT program last year and was released from custody back in July. He was happy to report that he'd been clean since his release and was so grateful that we had a MAT program for him to change his life around. That's just one success that we know of. Ironically, it's tough for us to measure our success because we don't always get to see the individuals after they leave our custody. So when we have those moments, we celebrate those moments. We don't know how the Measure 110 reform is going to impact us, but we believe we will see an increase of individuals in our custody who will need these services. We have partnered with Emergence to have peer support specialists in the jail lobby to offer support to individuals when they're released from custody. Right now, the peer support specialists are there 4 evenings a week with a goal to expand when Emergence has enough staffing. Just for a side note, that's not a program that the Sheriff's Office is paying for. Emergence is managing that. Unfortunately, the population in our facility tend toward individuals that suffer from mental health issues. Psychotropic medication dispensed continue to increase. Emergency room and outside medical appointments have also increased significantly. Each quarter, WellPath takes a snapshot in time to see what the adult in custody patient population looks like when it comes to medical and mental health services needed. This last quarter, 78% of the individuals in our custody on that day had a mental health alert in the system indicating that they had been diagnosed with a mental health condition or required mental health services. During the last 4 quarters, an average of 77% of the individuals in custody had a mental health alert. Those with serious mental illness, like psychotic disorders and mood disorders, typically comprise of about 20 to 25% of our population. Recently, an individual in our care had been using substances to self-medicate their mental health condition. While in our care, this individual was able to get started on mental health medications, be part of our wellness program, obtain services from the Lane County Behavioral Health Forensic Intensive Treatment Team, known as FIT, and eventually be accepted into mental health court. It was highly unlikely that this individual would have been accepted into mental health court, but through support and advocacy, this individual was granted this opportunity. In the wellness program, this individual was able to develop skills and eventually be a strong support for others in the group. This example is why we invest so heavily in our own mental health program and partner with the FIT program. As mentioned, there is a significant population of individuals who have a mental health disorder in our facility. We have been proactive with engagement with community partners to find ways to divert individuals away from the criminal justice system when appropriate. We do not have the tools and support to manage this population that would be better served outside of the criminal justice system. We see firsthand how the lack of a true crisis system in Lane County has a negative effect on our community and puts strain in the criminal justice system that should not exist. From the FIT team, Measure 110 reform to an actual stabilization center, we are committed to working with our community partners in the continued development of a crisis system. Work within the facility funded through the ARPA funding began in April of this year. This project is anticipated to conclude by September 2025. A construction project of this magnitude and duration presents operational challenges, specifically when it comes to each individual housing area. During construction, we will always maintain at a minimum our levy promise and will uphold rigorous safety standards for both the community and the facility. On October 1st this year, the funding from the Comprehensive Opioid Stimulant and Substance Use Program grant that established us the ability to build our MAP program will have ended. We are hopeful through the 1115 Medicaid waivers there will be funding for MAP programs, but until that funding stream is available, we need funding to cover that gap by either using opioid funding or another identified funding source. There is a reduction in revenue from the CCA for this biennium that I mentioned earlier. This was caused by the state reducing the overall budget, and Lane County's percentage of the overall budget went down. This caused a reduction in FTE for the upcoming fiscal year and could have additional impacts in the near future on the jail and alternative programs if the state does not fulfill their promises with appropriate funding. The current Lane County Jail opened in 1979 and has undergone 2 additions over time. However, the use of the facility has outgrown its design and layout. Inefficiencies, resource-intensive processes, and supervision challenges arise due to the architectural style of the building and the current types of the ASCs who are being housed. The aging jail experiences structural and system failures. For example, the housing area known as intake is sinking into the ground that is causing maintenance staff to shave the cell doors so the doors can open and close. And those are the pictures right here. And in this one picture that shows the gap between the door and the door frame, I can actually put my hand through that gap. It's not good in a correctional facility. And then we also have the equipment responsible for providing meals to the AIC population requires updating or replacement. This equipment ensures efficient meal preparation and distribution, which is crucial in a statutory requirement. All the sewer lines that service the kitchen and laundry are under the concrete floor in the kitchen. These lines are from the original construction of the facility and are starting to fail. If the lines fail, we will have to outsource our meals and laundry services to the AICs, and that will be very expensive for us to do. A remodel of the pretrial services is needed. This area is a cramped space, and a remodel would enhance operational efficiencies. This was originally part of our ARPA project, but because of the rising costs, we're unfortunately not able to incorporate that into the project. In 2021, we had a building needs analysis completed. Part of the analysis was looking at future jail capacity based upon population trends and daily AIC population trends. Based on the data, it was noted that by 2040, we will have a need for a 525-bed facility. A key component as to why our need is not more is because of the work pretrial services and our alternative programs do. Without these components in our system, our need for a much larger facility of 1,500 beds is recommended for our community. This report brings to light that we need to start looking at potentially expanding our facility and also how important alternative programs and pretrial services is to our system as a whole. And with that is all I have, and I will turn it back over to the sheriff and the chief.
Happy to have the chief deputy field questions, and I'll fill in where I feel like I need to.
So before I start answering questions, if you have them, I just want to say thank you to our team here who did a great job. They're all very much experts in their areas, and to include Debbie over here, who has been working her tail off this budget season trying to get ready for this day. So with that, I'm Carl Wilkson. I'm Chief Deputy for the Sheriff's Office, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you guys all have. So.
I'm sure there are questions. Oh,
Chair, thank you, Chair. Wow, great picture with black ink. Thank you very much for filling that in. I guess the question I have is there's such a need here, and you all know that public safety is my #1 priority, so I'm listening and trying to figure out what we can do to move the needle. And I guess the question that may have to be asked first to get us going is, at what stage of this do you think an immediate investment would move the needle proportionally to give us some momentum to keep going forward?
I apologize, Commissioner, but I'm not sure I understand.
Well, let me ask this. I mean, this is kind of what's in my head. Maybe if you get in my head a little bit, you might understand what I'm asking. I mean, you were talking about on April, we had a vortex of the I-5 protests, 2 murders, an assault on deputies, and an investigational load where all of the deputies that you listed were involved in each one of those instances. And then you also talked about the HAWK program as being a critical component of of giving our already stretched thin public safety crew a chance to be successful. So in my mind, I'm thinking if there was anything that we were going to do to help this force of great people that serve our community, maybe that's a place we start to invest in and then move from there. So is that a place where you think would move the needle more significantly, or is there somewhere else that you think would?
Well, I will answer that by saying that primarily what we've done for our health and wellness program has been volunteer driven, to include staff volunteers. We have one particular husband and wife combo team who work for us who have probably donated hundreds of hours, dragging their kids along to do the work to help us get the HAWK going. So we have done it on the cheap, and we've done it with a lot of collaboration with volunteers. However, we don't have the budget to continue to keep going down that road. We're trying to determine what we can do with community collaboration and volunteer work, but to be honest, it's not fair to expect our staff to volunteer to do that kind of work on a regular basis. So I think anything that we can do to invest in our staff and their health and wellness is going to help move the needle on helping them, which helps us, the community, in the long run. I think statistically it's been proven that those who are in law enforcement who are healthy in the 4 pillars that we are focusing on provide a much better product to the community and generally receive far fewer citizen complaints and are more productive in their duties. So.
Just going to add on a little bit. We also have volunteers that are doing financial briefings for our staff. We have volunteer chaplains available on peer support team. But I think sort of the big picture that you started with, when we've prepared in the past a public safety repair plan, 10-year public safety repair plan. The last time we put one together was 2021. We had it in 3 stages, which was keep what we have, I think was stage 1, and then try to keep what we have, cover the basic foundational needs, and then what we really think the community should have were the 3 stages. So I sort of still think in terms of that when I think of public safety and how to take care of the people. The first thing is we've made the case, and I think adequately, that we don't have enough staff. We don't have the resources for enough staff. So step 1 would be to not lose staff. Step two would be take care of those staff that we have so that they can stick around and continue to do the work and be healthy. And then step three is to try, as the Public Safety Funding Task Force is wrestling with right now, try to find a way so that we can actually have the staff we ought to have. When we talk about the same deputies going to multiple calls, well, it's because the minimum staffing is 3 deputies on a shift. And so, Lynn County is a quarter of the population and much less of that geographically. I think they have a minimum staffing of 5 to 7 deputies a shift. So, that's certainly a target, but a significant jump from where we are today.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we're talking statistics too. I mean, let's just look at numbers here. Just one statistic is that law enforcement officers are 78% more susceptible to a cardiac arrest than anyone else, and the average cardiac arrest costs the health and wellness portion of their medical benefits an average of $740,000 per episode. So if you look at just that investment alone, it would just take one of you to have a stress-related cardiac event, and the county's out $750,000, not to mention your great expertise and time. So you'd think that maybe we should invest some money to help prevent that on your behalf. It would actually pay us dollars and cents.
Others, questions?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation and all your work. You all know, I hope, how much I appreciate you. Having worked with you on a number of different initiatives over the time. A couple of questions. This is really a statement. It's just disappointing as someone who was on the board when we allocated the ARPA dollars because of all the many reasons we weren't able to move on those projects quickly enough. And now the value of those dollars means we can't do all the things that we approved the dollars to do. So that's a shame. I had a question for Captain about the MAT. You named some numbers about folks. Were those unduplicated numbers? Or it is? Okay, thank you. And you made a comment that the Measure 110 reforms, you anticipate an increase to use of that program. Why do you think having deflection in place will increase the number of people in custody needing MAT services?
Well, we don't know how it's gonna, right? How it's gonna impact us completely, but by having the ability to lodge people in jail on those crimes, more likely those individuals are gonna be under opioid substance disorders. Excuse me. So my foreshadowing is I think we'll have more people in custody that are going to either be on that medications already, that are now coming into the facility that we gotta maintain, or people that are now, because of deflection as an opportunity, and I'm hoping that the minds of the people are more willing to be on that medication to get help, and the services will be up to.
It'll be interesting to see what happens, because my sort of understanding expectation of that is the inverse, is the opposite, that we're deflecting people out of jail because it's not the right setting, that they do need those services, but we'll be deflecting and handing them off to other avenues to receive them. So that's my.
Well, I think too, though, I mean, it's, nobody was getting booked into jail for possession.
Right.
Before.
Right. Okay, so you're talking about possession charges specifically.
Yeah, and so now it is a possibility. Lane County has all agreed we're gonna make a very solid effort towards deflecting. But I also think that there's gonna be multiple off-ramps to deflection, and so if the first few aren't successful pre-jail, I envision a scenario where there is an arrest, a booking, and then at their first court appearance, they might get deflected. The DA's office would probably call that a diversion. So I think there's gonna be multiple off-ramps, and so we are anticipating probably some increase in the use of the jail, just simply for, those positions.
Maybe in the nearer term anyway. Yeah, okay, thank you, that's helpful. Another, less a question than a comment and a fingers crossed, the comment about the paid leave, the high usage of paid leave Oregon. We had a lot of conversation about that at the board, and something that Director Eve Gray mentioned that hadn't occurred to me was there was probably a heavier usage in the first year because of basically pent-up demand. People had been putting off surgeries, bringing kids into their lives because they didn't have the benefit. So we probably saw kind of a spike, let's hope. So I'll be very interested to hear next year what the trend of usage of paid leave Oregon for your department looks like. My other question, probably for the sheriff or chief deputy, is you mentioned in those high-capacity response incidents, and just generally, there's an understanding about interjurisdictional response that other jurisdictions will ask for backup or reinforcement. Does that work the other way around? And do we do it across from county to county, or is it just within Lane County, the different law enforcement jurisdictions?
Well, I will just answer that by saying that Lane County's been really, really good about being collaborative in a lot of different areas, to include our Public Safety Coordinating Council and our jail cooperation with our CCOs, and because our area is not overstaffed in law enforcement response, we have wonderful collaborative relationships with all of the law enforcement agencies, specifically Oregon State Police and Lane County Sheriff's Office. Collectively work together hand in hand on patrol response calls and those criminal investigations that require that higher or a more enhanced investigation, to include detective work. So yeah, it goes both ways, but the reality is, even though we're not where we should be, we have more than the little cities have, like Coburg and Cottage Grove and Oak Ridge and Jefferson City. So we probably tend to help them more than they help us, but it does go both ways.
Couple quick examples. Cottage Grove PD won't hesitate to go 20 miles up Route River Road to keep a deputy safe on a call.
Right.
Junction City's the same way. All of our local PDs are that way. Eugene had a significant number of personnel helping us capture that Cinnamon Avenue shooting that you just heard about. Had a lot of personnel there. And then a quick reminder, Holiday Farm Fire. We had agencies from all over the state for weeks helping us out with that. So yeah, definitely. State of Oregon's really good at it. I'll also just share, because I enjoy hearing it. I've always been a Lane County guy, but we currently have a captain of the state police who's responsible for the southwest region of the state. But he's based out of Springfield, and he's at the tail end of his career. He's worked all over the state, and he can't stop telling me how amazed he is at the relationship in Lane County between the state police and the sheriff's office, and that's not always the relationship the state police have in other counties. But it's been that way for as long as I've been part of the sheriff's office. We've always worked really well with them.
Great, thank you. And county to county, I assume, given you mentioned a county up not far up north having triple our capacity?
Yeah, for sure. Again, Deschutes County has been a tremendous partner. Again, Holiday Farm Fire, they had 5 deputies for weeks and weeks. And more recently, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office has been in our county helping our folks with marijuana search warrants. And so, yeah, Lynn County and Lane County have worked hand in hand more recently, because some of these events on the freeway, first coming south with the Amber Alert, but then when you didn't hear about, which was actually only 3 days after the last one you did hear about, was a rolling gun battle in the city of Coburg, which resulted in a pursuit up into Lane County, which resulted in yet another officer-involved shooting. So.
You mentioned the GROW operations. Remind me, where are we in that grant?
I think today on consent calendar, you just approved additional funding that should take us through December 31st of next year.
Of next year.
2024.
Yeah, great, thanks. Okay, my final question, what happened to the kitten? That slide up there with the kitten on his shoulder.
I don't know.
The kitten was just giving love.
It was just therapy kitten.
Yeah,
It's part of the wellness program.
I love that. Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Buck.
Part of what wasn't presented, but you just brought up wildfire, and we know like pretty much every year this consumes your department, because we're doing something in relation to wildfire evacuations. And I was curious if you had the ability to financially document how much time that consumes away from your regular daily work. I know that we document it for FEMA reasons, but this is a time of year that you're on high alert and you can be allocating resources to a particular location, or sometimes more than one location at a time, that takes away your ability to do regular ongoing work. And is there a way in which we can see the financial impact and burden? That I ask that because that helps make my case for other arguments at a higher level.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Commissioner, because what we lean most heavily on are the folks in this room who are salary and just work ridiculous numbers of hours, because that's what we can do. That's what we can afford to do. So I appreciate that question. During Holiday Farm Fire, we did find a way to track salary hours that were outside of the norm. They ultimately were not eligible for FEMA reimbursement, but we did sort out a way to track them. So I hear your point. I understand that there would probably be value if we did that as we head into summer and I start feeling that cardiac event that Commissioner Lovell was talking about.
Not funny, but I appreciate it.
I recognize the value in the future of that effort.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. You know, it's hard to know where to start on this because we all recognize the fact that we're dreadfully understaffed. And we smile about it, even sometimes laugh about it in this room. But how can we laugh about this? Lieutenant Speldrich, you talked about deputies per 100,000 people. We're at 0.19 on patrol. And
Deputies per 1,000.
I said, yeah, per 1,000 people, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what is Clackamas County? If they're
on that chart.
Let's say if they're, and I have a photo of the chart.
It's right there.
Right. Can you read my chart?
It's hard to read.
But
Clackamas, 0.48, looks like.
thank you. So 0.48. So they're more than. Thank you. Better eyes than I am, of course. But I wanted to say it out loud. What's the state average on deputies? You do state that it was around 0.48, wasn't it?
It's real close to 0.4.
The state
Oh,
average, I think, is 0.37.
0.37.
Our comparator average is 0.4.
That's the one I was looking at. So roughly double what we have in Lane County. And Oregon is already behind the other states.
Yes.
My point there is Clackamas County, if it has roughly the same population, a little bit more than we have. So if they have that ratio, then they have more than double the numbers of deputies that we have with less than half of the geographic area. So you all are doing all of this in a county the size of, that goes from the top of the Three Sisters to the Sea Lion Caves, you know, and everything in between. And, you know, the point that I'm making there is that the public trusts you. This is a side to that, as made evident by the third passage of the levy. This time, what was the percentage that we passed it by this time, Sheriff? 79%. I usually say 80.
Yeah.
But, so 8 out of 10 people trust what we're doing in the Sheriff's Department, and they've demonstrated that. Yet at the same time, we continually are operating on less in the Sheriff's Department in terms of the cost of services that we're providing and the number of deputies and support staff that we're providing. So I'm not making any particular plea for numbers here, but what I'm saying is I hope we all understand how far behind we are on this and how much we expect of the LCS, or the Lane County Sheriff's Office, from the jails to the patrol to animal control and everything in between. And you know, it's once again no point. But every time no point that I'm making in particular, other than that we are dreadfully behind. And anytime we consider reductions in services in the Sheriff's Department, we're already behind. We're already less than half of the state average, or the compared to county average. So as we look to the budget this year, what I'm going to be looking at is how can we keep the Sheriff's Department at least whole throughout this budget process, and not be looking at cuts in the Sheriff's Department, because no other department has, and I made some notes here, had to overpower somebody to keep from getting injured. How many other departments have to overpower somebody who's swinging and shooting at them? You know, there's a very special service that we expect of you all, and for us to continually cut it. We've gotten used to it. It's like turning up the heat gradually. You know, when I first came to municipal government, the garage downstairs was full of sheriff's cars, police cars. And now how many are down there? Because a lot of them are out on the road, but out in people's driveways. But the fact is, we continually cut services we have because of the lack of general fund dollars that have been available, and we need to be more aggressive in trying to find ways to keep the Sheriff's Department whole.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Farr. It just reminds me, it bears repeating, I think the administrator mentioned it at the budget kickoff, but it's a little apples to oranges, because one of the reasons it's so costly is this is the only service we provide that's 24/7, 365. That we are there is someone being paid to do work all the time, every day, no matter what. It's not a 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. And it's very specialized equipment intensive. We heard about, patrol cars and body cams. So I think it's just important when we look at the service delivery and the number of FTE relative to population, it's a standalone because of that. If you, I don't know what the right word would be in budget language, but if you adjusted the formula to make it comparable to other departments that are on roughly a 40-hour week, it wouldn't look, I'm not saying it's not so actually bad, because it is what it is, and we are woefully under-resourced, but it's not an apples to oranges when we say, well, this department has this FTE per people served, why is this one so at such a deficit? And what I hear over and over from my service on the budget committee for a term to my first term in office, there's a lot of opportunity and need for continued advocacy and pressure at the state and federal level, because a lot of this is just structural. It's formula problems that are then creating problems for us at the local level. And that 115 waiver is another great example. The burden, the relief that would give if those medical services that we're providing weren't on our dime, if people could keep their health care benefits when they were in custody, let alone the quality of their life to have it seamless upon their release, so that for those that recidivate, they're not in such degraded shape when we get them back. Like, those are the kinds of things that are really actual structural fixes that don't impact the rest of our budget. We're not taking money from some other under-resourced department to put it here. So I will always be a fan and an advocate of doing all we can at those state and federal levels to make sure we work on those really unjust and out of balance formulas that we're stuck with and we suffer from.
Then I'll continue just a bit. You triple underline the fact that the Sheriff's Department needs greater service, because they are around the clock. Nobody else is around the clock. When I'm asleep at night, they're on the job. Mm-hmm. When we're all sleeping at night, when we're all getting up in the morning, they've already been on the job and they've never gotten off the job, which means that it's even more important that we pay attention to the staffing in the Sheriff's Department.
Well, and not to be a bearer of bad news, but in West and East Lane, we're not 24/7. So I think once people really start hearing that at the end of next year, West and East Lane aren't going to have 2 deputies, there's going to be an absolute outcry. Mm-hmm. So I agree, Commissioner Chair Trigger, to really start attacking this at the state level.
And the federal level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna put my 2 bits worth in just because I just want to express my appreciation, gratitude, respect for all of you that serve in the sheriff's office. That it's, like I said, it has to be a calling for you to want to do that, and I just really appreciate it. I know everybody here does, but it's just, like I said, it is a calling, and thank you very much. And the other part I would like to say is that from what Sheriff Harold was going, the first part was to keep what we got, or keep what you have. I mean, that's and so again, as several of them, Commissioner Farr and Trigger and Lovell and all of you said, how do we keep what we have right now? And somehow we need to find a way to keep what we have and not go backwards. That's my 2 bits worth.
Sheriff Farr, would you remind us what those other 2 pillars are? Keep what we have and...
Gosh, I wish I had that language in front of me. It was keep what we have. It was provide the core basics or basic foundational services.
It was felony capacity. It was restore felony capacity, and that was phase 2. And then phase 3 was restore capacity to deal with misdemeanors at all levels. So, yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Anything else for our guests?
I would like to brag one more time on our staff. So what you have is a free gift. It's our first ever Sheriff's Annual Report.
Okay, I've never seen this before. This is excellent.
This started because the Washington County Sheriff's Office, who has, I think, 5 FTE assigned to the Public Information Office, they have a studio in their office. They present an annual report, which looks pretty snazzy, and I share it with some of our leadership team, never imagining that we could put anything together because we don't have the staff. And primarily led by our awesome administrative assistants in the different divisions, they said, we can do something like that. And they worked really hard on it, and we're really proud of it. So excited that we were able to put something together. and leave it with you.
Tom, will you sign this for me, please?
How are you using these? And if we wanted to take copies out to events we're attending or things, where can we get a small stack?
Just shoot me an email or a text and we'll leave some for you. I'm gonna leave just a very small stack here. You all are the first recipients. Nobody, we haven't even distributed them internally. My assistant, Mindy Hendricks, drove to Albany to pick them up because the printer said that she could have them done in time to deliver them here. And would love to have you provide us feedback on, one, uses that you all see, things that jump out at you that we should do in next year's annual report, or updates, or since it's our first one, we're happy to take feedback. So.
I think we have a task force that might like to see this report.
They got, we didn't have it printed in time, but again, the awesome administrative staff created with a little folder, so they did get this, just not in the snazzy magazine look.
Thank you.
Cool.
This has Lieutenant Speldrich's photo skills written all over it. Good job, Tom.
Of course, it's on the
From one photographer to another.
I didn't take a picture of that.
I did.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is really cool.
Good afternoon.
Hey, I've seen a lot of you today.
It's been a while. Look at that. That's posh.
Keeps it going.
I'm thinking.
Didn't even grab a cookie real quick.
You're gonna move.
Real.
Let's go to that door, Pat. I can't. That chair will pull up to number one.
That's what I found out.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Are we on a break?
Yeah. Thank you.
2:05. No, we're actually break after this.
I'm looking at the wrong agenda.
Break after this. Coming back for more, huh?
Hi there.
Yep.
I apologize for getting a chance to go. Hey, Greg, how are you doing? Not bad. It's been a while. It's of my own doing. It's tremendous to see your name and your face here at the budget committee. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Sure. How's Taylor doing?
She's doing great.
Great. You know, it's been like 20 years, 22 years since she was in my class, something like that.
I believe that's true, and we also have across the table, Taylor's first mentor.
She was an intern with me almost, how long ago now? 15 years ago? Let's just say a while ago.
I had an intro anthro class at one point in like
Probably around the
2000.
same time.
Thank you.
Where were you when she entered?
United Way.
Oh, United Way.
She was running, I think, a summer reading spot during the
Okay.
summer. Yeah.
Cool.
Things I love about this community is our connections run deep.
It's big. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I guess you're back.
We're all back.
Good job. So it's your turn. So take it away, Greg, and you can get staff or whatever and go for it.
Thank you all very much. We're now going to turn to Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services. I have with me today, I think first and foremost, Pat Robb, who started as the manager, the division manager on April 27th. She has the job full-time now after about 7 months of acting. She went through a competitive process, was a successful candidate, and we're thrilled to have Patty join us. And as you have a chance to work with her and understand her background, everything from lived experience with being unhoused as a youth to her multiple degrees, you will find that we have a remarkable individual on our team. We also have with us today Krisha Brunsman, who's a supervisor in parole and probation. Donovan Dumeyer made the decision to have a knee replaced instead of coming to the budget committee. But he will be ably represented by Krisha today. And of course we have Kelly with us, who is Our finance and admin manager, Kelly Barlow's been with the county in several different departments, and we're grateful that she's with Community Justice. And then our numbers guru, Lynn Smith, is taking the back row and will kibitz as needed. I want to run through this real quick. And I should say about Kreisha, as a supervisor, she is acting in capacity for the duration of Donovan's time out. Her team that she works with includes the sex offender unit, the group supervision, reduced supervision, does intake, and then has some of the innovative programs we'll talk about today, including the Way Home and the 416 program. So which is a pretty typical workload for one of our supervisors in full probation. Next slide. And I was meant to say, since we were able to watch a bit of the Sheriff's Office, this is your other department with 24/7 services. We run the juvenile detention program, and we never close up shop. So 24/7, both for our treatment and our detention programs. Those are full residential around-the-clock programs. The only thing new and different about this, the work of community justice is to help those individuals that are justice involved successfully re-enter the community. There is no away when it comes to human beings. So all of our justice involved individuals, except for a very small number, end up coming back to the community that they resided in before they got involved in the justice system. Our job is to help them successfully transition back into the community so they can fully belong and succeed in our county. Whether that's the youth side or the adult side, that really is our focus. We're adding the newest division in Lane County, the deflection program. This House Bill 4002 just passed the start of April. It's a chance to help deflect individuals from the justice-involved system for individuals where treatment is a better option than jail. And we'll talk a little bit more as we go through. The budget. We do have one, which is a good thing. A lot of it is state dollars. It's coming through, in terms of adult probation, it's really coming through the Community Corrections Act, the Justice Reinvestment Grant. We'll talk about those when we talk about distressed funds, because we are harmed by the formulas used by the state in this effort to create all counties as equal. We're really kind of put as a disadvantage. We'll talk about that. We do benefit from the local option levy. The jail levy does pay for 8 beds in detention and 8 beds in treatment, with the county's promise that we will keep 8 beds in detention and 8 beds in treatment paid for from other sources. So we, like the Sheriff's Office, are very proud of the promises we keep when it comes to the jail levy and the usage of those funds. Thank you for your work in keeping the levy passed. We could probably move on unless there's questions or thoughts. Unlike all the other departments in front of you, our personnel costs continue to rise. It's just the reality. Our department has 3 different bargaining units: AFSCME, LCPOA, the Sheriff's Office, police officers, and then FOPO, the Federation of Oregon Parole and Probation Officers. So, and 2 out of those 3 are in bargaining right now. So it really is a driver. People are our business, and the resources we use to help people are our people. So the personnel costs continue to rise. The materials and supplies, you'll see an increase there. We are moving towards a contract for medical and behavioral health services in the youth services side of the coin. We've underserved our population when it comes to the medical care and the behavioral health care that the acuity of our young people need. So we are contracting with WellPath the same partner that the sheriff's office uses, and we think we've really done a commendable job of having that be fiscally responsible. It also ensures that we have the 24/7 healthcare support that we need, so that when we have a young person in crisis at 2 a.m., we have WellPath with us because they're actually there at the jail. It'll be a phone call for us, but we will have that kind of 24/7 response that WellPath's offering. That's been the largest driver of materials and supplies. Shall we move on? Administration division. The only thing so we have admin and finance within that unit. The one thing that might be a little bit surprising is the family mediation program. It's a relatively small 5-person program. What that is the mechanism to help individuals who are working on child custody efforts in the courtroom. We are one of the counties where mediation is mandated before individuals can proceed in a court case when it comes to custodial rights issues. So we have mediators and family life skills trainers who work with everyone that's going through divorce and has custodial issues that they're trying to work through. So it is a well-used program. We do it with just 2 mediators, and it borders a little bit on the miraculous, but it is a highly valued program. It resides within our department. It was a past administration decision, and it's a great team to have included. In one of my prior lives, I spent 30 years mediating and have a great fondness for strong mediation programs. So supporting this team is a great part of our work. Next slide, the deflection program. I don't want to bore the county commissioners with a repeat of our morning's activity. As of, I think, 11:30 this morning, we have a deflection program, thanks to a 5-0 vote by the board. This HB 4002 created this new program and has given counties the option to put together a program that works with law enforcement at the point of contact with individuals to make a determination in the moment to decide whether individuals need to go into a justice-involved path, need to be cited or arrested, or whether they are a likely candidate for treatment. In that moment, they can make a call to have an individual, a peer support individual, come out and do a warm handoff, and that individual will help the client start to work through a treatment path that is appropriate for their needs. We haven't designed it yet. We will be designing it together with the justice system, all of the law enforcement agencies throughout the county, all of the peer support specialists throughout the county, and all of the treatment centers across the county. What's really critical, and what was pointed out today by the commissioners, is this has to work in all 4 corners. This has to work in Oak Ridge and in Florence, Cottage Grove, and I think with so many of our services in the metropolitan area, I think we can pretty much guarantee a 20-minute response time, and that is whether it's 2 a.m. or 2 p.m., somebody arriving in the street to assist that officer in responding to that need and starting that individual in the treatment path. We'll have some work to do to help make sure the communities throughout our 4,700 square miles have the resources they need, both in terms of peer support and treatment. The state at this front end is doing a commendable job of funding the program. The formula used for these dollars, it was the same formula used for the IMPACTS program, the behavioral health window, and that is, our numbers are pretty extensive, and consequently, the funding for the program is pretty extensive to start with. 1.9 million to start up with. We don't know what the state will offer us in terms of ongoing funding for the program, and that will be something that we'll be having conversations with in the coming months. We have more questions than answers. And we don't know what the future funding looks like. And we'll need to be attentive to that over time. There's been a number of programs that have had great intention coming out of the gates and then have struggled a little bit continuing on with a significant funding stream. That cannot happen here. So we'll be paying careful attention to that. And there's this is one of the final things done in the short session. We know it's going to be revisited in 25 long session, and we'll be using the county lobbyists to pay attention to that. I think it's time for me to be quiet for a while. Gracia.
Well, thank you for having me be here. This is my first time here, so bear with me as I migrate through this. But again, my name is Gracia Brunson. I'm the supervisor. I supervise 3/4 of these specialized services that we have. So when people think of parole and probation, they think of our general clientele, but we do have specialized units that offer pretty innovative services. And this is some of them. I'll touch upon a few of these because a few of the other ones we'll kind of get to in some future slides. But some of our more specialized units are our sex offender unit and our domestic violence unit. So we have 3 full-time officers that supervise those convicted of sex offenses within Lane County. And we have about 6 full-time officers dedicated to our domestic violence unit that supervise those clients convicted of both the misdemeanor and felony domestic violence. And so we're pretty innovative. I believe I go across the state to our network meetings and look at what the other counties in the state are doing as it relates to these units, and I feel like we're pretty progressive in what we're doing and what we're using those monies for. Our contracted treatment providers are in both those units are dedicated to doing evidence-based treatment. So that's pretty innovative. And we target our treatment dollars to those medium and high-risk clientele. So those monies are really focused on those clientele, not to our lower-risk clientele. We have our mental health unit, which I'll talk about in a future slide, but that's a new unit that we've had over the last year or two that's really was designed to address the glaring need that we have in this community and across the state and across the nation in terms of our justice-involved individuals and their mental health issues. And so, and then our Way Home program is our supportive housing project. So it's a PO that's dedicated. It's an outline officer who is working with those clients to do some intensive supervision and to provide housing opportunities, and I'll get to that in another slide as well. We also have 3 full-time officers dedicated to our justice-involved women. So we have gender-responsive caseloads. So those clients that identify as female are assigned to one of our officers there, and most of those, we have outlined stations so that the men and women aren't at the same location. We found that that's the best way to serve that population, and so we have, like I said, 3 officers for that. We have our 416 program. So that program is designed for those clients who maybe would be looking at prison time based on their crime of conviction, and if they're identified for the 416 program, they're diverted onto probation where they're assigned a full-time officer who does intensive supervision and wraparound services for that clientele. So it really has done well. You can imagine if there's intense supervision and a lot of supportive services that we've seen a huge reduction in recidivism for that population. And then, of course, we have our treatment courts, which have been around for quite some time, so our Veterans Court, Drug Court, and our Mental Health Court. And we also have our, they say transition services, our AIP. So for those clients who have identified who are inside the prison system who could benefit from intensive treatment while in prison, when they complete that intensive treatment, they get a reduction in their sentence, come out, and they're assigned to a particular officer who does intensive supervision with them for a period of time until they move to their post-prison. Any questions? I just kind of went right on through that. Right, our next slide. So, what I will say is I do work, this talks about a lot of the changes, and a lot of this is, I'm sure, is difficult. I work with a group of people that are highly dedicated to what we do. As services have had to be reduced, funding is reduced, caseloads have increased over time. The personnel that we work with are an amazing group of people that do more with less, and I can't say that enough. And with that being said, so some of the changes that we've seen is, yes, a loss in personnel. So currently in this year, we've lost 6 positions. Next year, we're on point to lose 2 more positions.
And some of that's due to the funding mechanism. We are tied to population numbers. The formula used to decide how much state funding we get was baked into a population number from the fall of 2023. And we need to live all of 24 and 25 with an artificially low number. And we'd be happy to talk about that at length.
The next change that we have is new statewide contact standards. We'll get to that on a different slide, but it is, the state has handed down uniformly across the whole state. So each county historically was allowed to create their own contact standards based on the needs of that county. The state has now handed down that across the state, regardless of what county you are supervised in, based on your risk level, there will be a minimum amount of contact standards that client will have with their parole officer, and that is a huge increase in uptick, which includes many more hours. So as the caseloads have increased and our contact standards have increased, it's really put a huge stress on the officers to meet those standards, and we'll talk about that in another slide. Some other changes is that now we've got some funded misdemeanor for domestic violence supervision services. So now we have our assault 4s and our menacings, which are domestic violence convictions. Those are misdemeanors. Not all of them, but those are funded now, as well as our sex abuse 3 cases are funded. And so those are cases that historically we had not uniformly supervised, that we are now supervising as well. So as what you might know or not know, but now the district attorney's office is fully staffed. So historically what has happened over the last few years is because they were not fully staffed, a lot of cases went to no file. So they weren't filing on cases. And so it saw a reduction in our numbers. But now that the district attorney's office is fully staffed, they're filing on cases, prosecuting and convicting. And so what we've seen is an uptick in our numbers because of those cases being prosecuted and convicted. And the other changes, as Greg talked about, is deflection. So as deflection comes down quite quickly, we will see our numbers increase as well. So those cases through Measure 110 that we had seen a reduction because those cases weren't being prosecuted, whether clients go through deflection and go through supervision, or whether deflection does not work and we see them, we're going to see an increase in numbers. And I think the percentage there is about, we expect to see a 30% increase in our numbers based on the deflection program. And I think that's good.
Yeah. There's your mental health unit.
There is our mental health unit. So yes, I do not supervise our mental health unit. Kim Fulton up there in the corner does supervise that unit. So what we've seen, right, which makes sense, is that if we don't address mental health, which is a huge barrier for this clientele, that we're never going to get to the drivers that get people to their criminal behavior. And so that has been glaring. And so what we have started is this new mental health unit. I said it's probably been over the last year or 2 we've begun to create it, cultivate it, and now it is up and running. We have 3 full-time officers who supervise our moderately to severely mentally ill population. And so we actually are, this is a unit that's been quite innovative, and so we have counties across the state looking to us to mirror what we've begun to start here. And so what we've done is this unit now assesses, prioritizes their resources, goes out into the community to meet these clients where they're at. The standard way of doing supervision with this clientele does not work. So asking them to come to our office, being here at a particular time, that does not work, and we were losing a lot of that clientele in addition to not addressing their mental health needs. So this unit is actually going out into the community, going to the homeless shelters, being out there in locations where a lot of our mental health seem to hang out, and meeting them where they are at. And so trying to provide those services and supervision for them out into the community. And so it's quite an innovative program. We're also out there meeting some of their basic needs. And so we're really excited about this unit.
And you don't need to take our word for it. If next time you have the FIT team working with you, ask the FIT team what they think about the mental health unit. Or for that matter, ask Eugene Police Department when they're choosing to drop clients off with their parole officer as opposed to taking them to jail. So we're already doing deflection work in this arena. It really is a remarkable thing.
And then the second part down here is our Way Home project, and that's been we've had that going now for 5 years. We have, like I said, one full-time officer who supervises that caseload. And so it's really a collaboration between Homes for Good sponsors and us. Looking down here at the numbers, so we've had 561 clients for those services. We've successfully housed 214. We've issued 95 Section 8 housing vouchers, and this is focused on our highest risk clientele. So 87% of those clients housed have maintained stable housing, and there's been a 70% reduction in recidivism for that target population. So we can't speak any more highly for that program.
And this program works out at the Oaks at 14th. So thank you, county, and the partnership to make that housing available. It's a difference maker.
And I think I jumped ahead of myself and talked about the mental health unit. I talked a little bit about those statewide contact standards. So for our population, the statewide standards now say that we need to have 3 contacts per month for our high-risk population and 2 for our medium-risk population.
And let me give an example. I mean, one of the things, we've talked about the 416 program. It's a model with sponsors and with emergence where there's a team wraparound service. So the parole officer, the emergence case manager, and the sponsor's case manager work together on individuals, and that has dropped recidivism from 45% down to 8%. It is totally effective. But it's all 3 individuals working together. Under these new contact standards, the contacts do not count if it's emergent staff or if it's sponsor staff. It's got to be only PO staff. So it's taking quality models that we know does work, and it's not recognizing the fact that that model works. All of these, it's measuring quantity over quality. So a lot of the work we're doing, that officer is still going to have 3 individual contacts themselves, and there's no credit for our partners doing the equal work with those individuals.
Yeah, so this will be a huge increase for us because we have to meet those contact standards through the state. And so we across the state have the highest we have the highest caseloads with the highest risk clientele, the way that it works in Wayne County. That's not the good news. So when you're looking at contact standards, you can then multiply that out to tell you how much more of a workload that's going to be.
This is a pilot project and will be revisited after this year, and we hope to be very influential in the review of the pilot project.
So it's not legislated then, it's...
No, it is not legislated. It's Department of Corrections. But we should probably keep moving on. Patty.
Youth Services. So Patty Robb with Youth Services Division. I am very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me today. I'd like to share a little bit about Youth Services. We have 6 units within our division. I'd just like to highlight a few of those and what we're really focused on. The addition of WellPath is a huge addition to what we've been providing to youth, and it changes the scope of services we can provide to youth as well. Right now, we have very limited medical services in our detention facility, and we will soon be able to offer a full scope of medical care, mental health care, and psychiatric care to youth in detention. So this is a huge accomplishment, and we are very grateful to have this opportunity. We are also, in addition to WellPath, developing our own clinical unit, which is providing outpatient therapy to youth and parents. And for example, we'll be able to not just serve youth, but be able to provide substance abuse treatment services to youth, parents, and siblings, as well as family outpatient services and individual services as well. So we're taking a very strong family approach in our mental health services in-house. We also have a very diversified vocational and education program at MLK. I'd like to highlight, we did recently receive a grant for a greenhouse, so we're looking at a food to table program, which will provide opportunities for youth in detention and at MLK school to be able to learn more about growing their food and how it makes its way to the table, and even into vocational opportunities for catering and engaging in the community in food to table resources. Next slide. Next slide's a little grim, talking about our cuts. I just want to highlight that this impacts our clerical support, our supervision team. We are reducing a juvenile counselor position and also a position, half-time position in our detention center. It's redistribution of burden, but we will make it work. We are doing more with less and trying to be innovative, and we'll continue to partner and look for grants and other revenue opportunities to grow the services to youth and families. We also have, again, highlighting the expansion of medical services in detention and Phoenix Treatment Services. One of the proposals you'll be seeing soon is a proposal for a 30-day detention program. This program is designed to provide stabilization and treatment services inside detention for a period of 30 days. The goal being that youth who are on supervision or adjudicated are often committed to the state and end up in youth correctional facilities or state treatment programs because we don't have resources locally to stabilize and then support them in their homes. So by having 30-day stabilization, they can come in and stabilize with psychiatric medication, full support for substance addiction or even withdrawal from fentanyl in a safe, medicated fashion. And then we can return them to home with in-home skills support, outpatient therapy, wraparound services in the home, and we can keep our youth here locally instead of committing them to the state. We unfortunately have about a rate of 20% higher than the state average of committing youth to the state for care. So we would like to reduce that.
Keeping Lane County, youth in Lane County.
Exactly. These are some of the initiatives that we at Youth Services have. Performance-based standards, which is establishing a culture of continuous improvement across all of our divisions. So we're setting goals, measuring those goals, and producing outcomes so that we can be clear on the work and the goals that we have and that we're meeting standards that are set nationally, statewide, and even locally. Our True North brand is our new mission, vision, values. It has been critical to improving the culture at Youth Services, which is going in the right direction. We have a very talented and committed staff, and they're also very committed to the new brand and the culture that we're building together. So, evidence-informed practices. I hear evidence-based a lot, and the difference with evidence-informed is that we're adding voice. So when you have evidence-based, you're looking at academics and you're looking at practices in the field, and when you have evidence-informed, you then add the voice of those receiving the services. So that's our goal, is to add that voice in many respects across the division and in the ways that we're working with youth. Let's see. Our educational vocational engagement, as I spoke, we have the grant through the Servu Foundation helping us with the greenhouse. We have other requests that are pending that we hope to propose soon to help us grow some of the vocational opportunities. Risk-based supervision, we are using risk-based and evidence-based tools in our supervision unit. We're also reestablishing all of our policies and practices and bringing those up to date, and using appropriate screenings and evidence-based tools to make sure that we're adequately screening youth and providing youth the services they need based on their own individual needs. And recovery integrated stabilization and evaluation services. That stands for the RISE program, which is the 30-day detention program, which we hope to propose soon for your consideration. Challenges and opportunities. There are many, and what I'd like to really focus on is that we are very engaged with vendor cross-cultural dynamics in creating the DEI lens to revamp all of our policies, procedures, and engagement with our partners with an overall goal of creating a strategic collaborative plan through a DEI lens. We would like to improve our disparity rate. Deflection will be a huge part of that opportunity, and make sure that we are building equity into all of the programs and services that we're providing to youth and families. We're also partnering with the U of O on a developmental approach, screening all youth for traumatic brain injuries, and we're also looking at other similar tools, screening youth for other developmental issues around vision and auditory and sensory deficiencies. I would estimate that about 85% of our youth have a traumatic brain injury or a deficiency in their vision or hearing. So it's significant. We will hopefully have data soon to be showing you more about the work that we're doing along that. So not only screening, but then connecting them with the services they need then to overcome those deficiencies.
Yeah, the population does not have access to services that if they would have that correct diagnosis, they would have access to. So without doing that research, they're foregoing opportunities for healing.
Absolutely. One of the great things the U of O does is through their screening tool, they will then connect them at their school with the IEP. So there's that follow-up with the educational system.
Should probably wrap up.
Okay. The other piece was just our opportunities for fee-for-service-based revenues and opportunities for revenue. We have several coming our way that we're excited and engaged to develop, and hope to have more to report on that to you all very soon.
Thank you. I think we're done.
Do we have questions for our presenters?
Just looking around to see if anybody else did before I.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. Oh, did you?
No, go ahead.
And welcome. It's great to meet you. Put a face to the name I've been hearing a lot about. I will just say I love the evidence-informed versus evidence-based, using the voices. I've also always understood that as what we have to do to mitigate for the historic inequalities and the gaps, right? Evidence has always been based, you gather evidence on what you study, and we haven't always studied with equitable, who's impacted. So that's great. I have, for Mr. Rickoff, a question about deflection that I thought of after this morning that now I get to ask you now. And maybe we don't know this yet, but is the opportunity for deflection only at the moment of the interaction with law enforcement, and we know it's at the discretion of that officer, but for example, could that officer charge the person, have them go to jail, and after they've been booked in, is there another opportunity for them to be deflected out rather than continue on the path they would have without the program in place?
Yes, there is. I think one of the things in talking today, talked about the possibility of having a navigator, a justice system navigator within the DA's office. They would look at exactly those points. The idea is we would get as porous as possible and find many routes to deflection along the way. But that is a critical moment. And we do hope to have that be baked into the design.
Great, because I don't know if you were in the room when the sheriff's office was presenting, and there was concern about, at least in the near term, an increase in demand on the services at WellPath with MAT and the jail. And so that seems like that's the place where, once that's in hand, the other issues could be
And I think those iterations will actually help us dial it in. If we're all of a sudden we're seeing that the DA's making different determinations and getting folks into the deflection stream, we'd be able to rework the system to take that into account. But that's a place where we have to be agile.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is a very simple question. How can you fix it? No. No, back to the state mandated, statewide contact standards. That really is troublesome. Because particularly when you added toward the end of your presentation that we have programs in place that are working, that this will supplant the resources that are working. So the question then is, this is a simple question, how long is the pilot program? Is that a full year?
2 years.
It's 2 years. And is there a chance to give input as it unfolds?
I believe there will be. There are continued conversations across the state with the community corrections directors, because I think this has been a continual conversation, because the state will be able to pull the numbers. They'll be able to see from our numbers whether we're meeting those standards or not, and I think it will be very difficult across the state, and it'll be difficult for Lane County, given, like I said, that we have the highest percentage of high-risk clientele given the size of our county, and so that just puts in an added strain. I will say this, those contacts have to be met with the officers themselves. We advocated, I know Donovan advocated very strongly to allow for the treatment that the clients are receiving outside of us to count for those contacts, and the state was very clear that that was not going to count. It doesn't necessarily mean that those clients won't receive those services. I believe they will. It's just that there's an added strain on the officers now to make these contacts directly, which then puts an added pressure on the clients and the officers themselves that I'm not sure that we're going to be able to meet successfully at the level that we need to, because we've capped our caseloads, and so we have caseloads right now, like my group supervision unit that I supervise is not being supervised by a PO. There's 2 POs supervising some high-risk and medium-risk clientele because we simply do not have the staff to, otherwise our caseloads would be at close to 100. And that's impossible for the POs to do. And so we've had to get creative and innovative, but it is not ideal.
So you mentioned in a different part of your presentation that other counties look to us to mirror the things that we're doing here. And when we're doing things well, and those things that we're doing well are being chopped off at the knees, basically, hopefully we can get other counties to join us in pressing for the need to for people who are making decisions to actually try to get their boots on the ground to see what the decisions that they're making cause.
I think there's almost universal concern amongst all the counties.
Good.
There is universal concern. I've been, so in Donovan's absence, and even when he was, prior to him being out on leave, I've been attending the community corrections directors meeting across the state, and so those conversations are happening, have happened, continue to happen, because I believe the intent was good, but the ability to meet it, and I don't think the outcome is going to be good.
Okay, there's more to be said about that regarding good intent with absolutely uninformed decisions.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A couple just quick questions are, it seems to me like most of the work that we're talking about here is done in the field. And so my question is generally, what do we have as a population in custody and at the facility? And I'm looking at just the facility as itself, and obviously we're using only about a third of it. So at what point do we determine that the facility right now is kind of something we need to look at?
Well, one of the greatest pieces of adding WellPath is that we're going to be changing how we do the work internally in detention. So adding the whole treatment component, adding stabilization and psychiatric stabilization for youth is a big deal. It essentially doubles the population for youth to come in from 16 to 32. So we're using the facility to a greater capacity. That's not to incarcerate more youth, but again, to keep more youth from being committed to the state. We're keeping those youth, we're providing them with that intensive intervention that is in a closed custody setting, but is very rich in therapeutic opportunities, and then returning them to their homes with wraparound services. So we are using the facility, it is a large facility, to greater capacity, and we are looking at innovative ways to use that space to serve our youth better.
And those numbers of 16 to 32 folks, they're an average of how much time in that facility? And 30 days is what I'm hearing, or would it be longer?
This would be a specific 30-day detention program.
Which is the maximum that we're allowed to keep young people.
It is, by statute. So there's a statute that drives that 30 days. There are youth that stay there longer, and there are youth that stay there less time. On average, I think we're averaging around 20 days.
Gotcha. Good, thanks.
And that is 16 out of 96 beds moving to 32 out of 96 beds. So we still have a lot more real estate that we're using for training facilities, and we've repurposed in some ways, but it is a 96-bed facility.
Other questions for our presenters? Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job, thank you.
I want to just note, as we're sort of going to take a break, I think, here and head into the second half of the presentations, you know, particularly for new budget committee members, we have this day today that we call our Public Safety Day, right? And we've, over the years, really gravitated to like, let's have all of our public safety partners, and you heard the sheriff talk about the 10-year public safety repair plan. That was a repair plan for the whole system. It was the sheriff's office, it was the district attorney's office, it was parole and probation, it was youth services, it was behavioral health, all part of that. And you heard the sheriff this morning talk about medication-assisted treatment and mental health treatment that's happening in the jail. You heard community justice rehabilitation services talk about the DA and prosecution and the mental health unit and the different, and now you're gonna hear from the DA and behavioral health, and it'll be interesting to see where they connect dots to other parts. So my point here is just as we talk about not allowing cuts in different, we talk about this as a system, because if you fund one part of the system really well, but the rest of it isn't adequately supported, it doesn't work well, right? Remember the analogy I was using of the oil in the gears that we have, so just keep that in mind as we're contemplating. You've seen reductions that are happening and investments clearly that need to be made, increased funding that we have to identify in these pieces. We need the whole system to function well together.
Can I just add one piece that you're not going to hear from is the justice courts. They are also mentioned in the 10-year public safety plan, and they were very critical when we had better traffic team enforcement. But the legislature changed some rules around how much fees we got to keep. And so now we're left with one justice court over in Florence. But that is a piece, and you do have one of your service option sheets on it. An important piece was a more important piece. And so not forgetting them in that as well.
And we keep electing the same legislators.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, 10 minutes. we're gonna move forward. Everybody's here except one. I think so. We'll go for
There he
it.
is.
Pardon?
Here he is.
Oh, welcome.
That was cooperating.
All right. Well, welcome back, Eve. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's your turn again, so.
No, thanks.
Okay,
No, I'm
well,
fine.
you know, we want to mix it up for you, not have you get tired of any one of us. So I will present on this one. I'm Eve Gray, Director of Health and Human Services. Thank you all for being here, and especially those of you who are giving your time. Thank you so much, really appreciate it. So we are here to talk about behavioral health today, which the county puts in the public safety system. Though we are conscious of the potential stigma that creates, and I think that it's good for us just to call that out, that behavioral health is not fundamentally a behavioral or a public safety program, but there is certainly a nexus that occurs. So our budget this year, I can include, okay, so this is just a reminder of all the areas within Health and Human Services with the STAR by Behavioral Health that we are covering today. Here's the information that is specific to behavioral health. So the numbers are a little bit different from what you saw in the rest of the Health and Human Services presentation. 86% of our funding from state and federal resources, 12% from fees and charges, primarily as part of our federally qualified health center. And then we do receive some general fund in this program that supports for FTE of commitment investigators, which is one of those underfunded mandates from the state. And our budget detail, you can see that our expenditures have increased, and that has been because we have, we're adding a program with Mobile Crisis, which we will talk more in more detail about with the board on June 4th in terms of the strategic planning for that program. But we did budget in some increase for that. And materials and expenditures increased as well with the increase to the programs. Now, this is not to suggest that we have the dollars to do what we need to do. We actually ran in our LCBH program, so that's excluding the treatment center, excluding lane care. We are projected to run close to a $7 million deficit this year that we are covering out of reserves. This is not a structurally balanced program. We are underfunded significantly to do the work that we are both mandated to do and that the community desperately needs. So that is a point of caution, but we are not asking for more money from the county for next year. We have both reserves that we are using to help balance, and the team took a challenge to find $1 million in the budget when budgeting for fiscal year 25, and they did it. They exceeded that target through closing vacant positions, better aligning personnel budgets to the work. We did transfer a position out of Behavioral Health Division in order to meet that $1 million target for reduction, and the team is aware that we're looking at more targets for reduction as well as revenue enhancements over the next year as we are spending down our lane care reserve, which is how we are keeping things whole right now. So we have a ton of work that is happening. And this is why you don't just see Dr. Gishohi up here, because she was trying to do it all. But we have now split the work of the senior manager in behavioral health so that Dr. Gishohi is focused on the requirements from the state through our CFAA, and also community relationships, strategic work, program planning, of which there is a ton that she will talk about. And Olivia McClelland is overseeing the operations of LCBH. And having this additional senior manager resource is so important for us to be able to do the kind of operational excellence initiatives that we need to do in order to think about a sustainable future in behavioral health. So our other programs within behavioral health, just really quickly, the overview, we have the here are the programs. I took LCBH, took a whole bunch of these programs are up here, and I just lumped them into LCBH, which is mostly running out of the Martin Luther King campus. And then our Lane County Treatment Center is a separate program within behavioral health, which does treatment for opioid addiction. And that is a revenue generating program for us. Is projected to generate about $2.6 million in excess revenue this year. We are also plugging our gaps in LCBH with our excess revenue out of the treatment center. And then there is another program, separate fund in behavioral health called Lane Care, which is the program that works with our insurance companies doing behavioral health case management work. Okay, so that is the overview. And you can see there FTE resources and expenses, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gishoki to take it from here because she's going to talk about her programs much more efficiently than I will.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'll talk about the programs in a little more detail, talk about what it is that each of the distinct programs that Eve mentioned. So out of MLK, we have our adult outpatient, and under that umbrella, we have most of our, actually not most, all of our forensic programs. And I'll start with those because that's kind of where we have most of the challenges in terms of funding and also opportunities in terms of advocacy and what we are working with the state on to figure out some of the gaps that we see out of behavioral health. So our forensic programs we have a civil commitment. Civil commitment is folks or clients that are unable to take care of themselves or inability to care or a danger to themselves or others. So they go through the civil commitment process, and they are either deemed unable to care for themselves or danger to society or themselves, and go through the civil commitment process. So under the LCBH, we have the civil commitment investigators, so they are the folks doing the investigations, and also a program after which they are civilly committed, then we are able to case manage those people to ensure that they are connected with services. That is where we are getting part of the general funds to cover expenses under civil commitment. We also have a post-commitment liaison that is a person that oversees a better term, monitors those under civil commitment, outpatient commitment, on how well they're doing in their treatment. We could use more than one liaison under civil commitment, but currently we only have funding for one. We also have aid and assist, though that is, we also call it 370. You hear us say the 370 program, and those are people who have committed a crime, but because of the nature of their symptoms, they're not able to aid in their defense. So they're going through treatment to regain competency to stand trial for the crimes that they have been charged with. So we have those individuals at the state hospital going through the restoration. It's not really treatment because they are primarily there to regain competency. And then once they stabilize, we get them in the community under community restoration. So they are in community settings, still undergoing further stabilization to be able to stand trial. We also have FIT under forensic services. FIT is a forensic intensive treatment team. That program is funded through the Criminal Justice Commission, and it's people who are regularly involved in the criminal justice system. So they are folks who like either using services at the state hospital, at the ED, regularly in and out of the jail. So we have a team that is engaging with them. The goal of it is to prevent them from cycling in. So they're engaging with them early on before they have to go down the route of the jail or criminal justice. So that team is countywide, so they are going to most of the, primarily they are in the metro area, but they are venturing out into Florence. They're going to Cottage Grove, they're going to Junction City, and doing a lot of really good work. They have many, many stories of successes, one of which they tell is a gentleman that they encountered at the Florence Dunes. That's where they were living, very symptomatic, and they have since engaged with that individual, and he is being housed at the Commons next to LCBH. So they're doing good work. It's very mobile. They have a prescriber with them, so they're able to prescribe medications wherever the clients are, and just primarily just engaging and getting people connected with services. And we added a newer little program under FIT to help with the downtown area. That program is under the city, so it's funded through the city of Eugene, and we've added clinicians to correspond with EPD downtown. And all they're doing is just primarily managing issues as they come up, and again, it's making sure that they're connected with the right people at the right time to prevent de-escalation.
Pardon me, that's Lane County staff embedded with the EPD.
Correct. It's, I think it's been featured a few times in the news. They are very happy with the program. It's doing a lot of good work, and we are hoping to expand that program even more in the fall. We'll be adding, I believe, 2 staff in the fall. Then the rest of the program is the typical outpatient folks that are just receiving outpatient treatment. We operate through a team-based care, so each team has about 250 clients that are assigned as part of their panel. The teams comprise of a prescriber, so a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner, 2 therapists, a peer specialist, and a case manager. Those are the folks that manage a panel of 250. So it's very comprehensive, depending on what the client needs. They either are engaging with a peer, engaging with a therapist, depending on what their needs are. So that is our adult outpatient and forensic services. We also have our child program, and that serves anywhere from age 6 and above, and sometimes younger, little ones to about 21. And sometimes we keep youth in the CAP program, the child and adolescent program, longer, depending on what their needs are before they they transition into the adult program. So that is also outpatient based on MLK, and we also are at the school. So we have satellite clinics at Churchill, North Eugene, and Springfield, and currently expanding or looking at expanding to Sheldon and South. We have a partnership with Peace Health. So the school-based health center has to have the component of primary care. That's how the school-based centers are licensed or certified. And we are working with Peace Health to expand to Sheldon and South, primarily on the behavioral health side, as the needs for behavioral health are more prevalent than the primary care, and it's a lot more expensive to establish the whole center So for the expansion to Sheldon and South, we will be starting with just the behavioral health component, looking at space and how we do that, and bringing in the component of the primary care, because it will take a lot more to build a full fidelity school-based health center than if we just started with the behavioral health part of it. The schools have been really, really asking and pushing us to get services into the other high schools as the need for behavioral health becomes even more intense in the schools.
And there is another high school in Eugene, you know. Willamette.
We will be happy to be in all the schools. Junction City has been another one that has been asking for services. So it's, as we get funded and as we get staff, we'll be able to go into more schools. We'd actually even want to be in the, yeah, so we're looking into more, expanding into that. The other program that we have out of MLK that is also one of the unfunded mandates is Adult Protective Services investigations. So those are, we have a couple people that do abuse and neglect investigations for folks who are in our care. So that is another unfunded mandate. And PSRB, thank you. That's why I have Olivia. So we do have PSRB. So PSRB is Psychiatric Review Security Board, and those are individuals who have been found guilty except for insanity. So they are in our community after a period of time at the state hospital and have stabilized to where we can manage them in community settings. So most of them are in group homes, and sometimes we do have individuals who are later in their recovery that are in independent living, but we are providing that additional layer of intensive services to make sure that they are following through with their treatment and care. The other part of our programming is the kind of the more, I think of it, the more systems part of the community mental health program aspect of our work. And as Eve mentioned, those are the two teams that are embedded under the CCO, so that's Trillium and Pacific Source. And what they do is care coordination or care management for members enrolled under the two CCOs. So the larger CMHP, the Community Mental Health Program, serves everybody, right? So we don't, it doesn't matter if they're enrolled with the CCOs or not, we're serving everybody. The teams that are embedded under the CCOs are serving members enrolled under their two CCOs. So they manage people under their insurance. We also have Choice. Choice is a program funded through the state, and what they are funding is management of the very complex individuals that we are serving in our communities. Usually those are more on the civil commitment side, those folks that are cycling through the system a lot of the times, and their needs are more complex. They have major comorbidities. It's not mental health, it's mental health, substance abuse, sometimes a lot of very severe medical issues, and needing a lot of comprehensive, complex case coordination. That is funded through Choice, and it's also managed through Lane Care. And they also manage older behavioral health efforts. That is an initiative through the state as well. It started as a pilot project where we are looking at what the needs are for the older adults and how to make sure that their needs are being met in a way that meets the older adult population, which is a little different than how we manage our adult population at MLK. So looking at how we serve them in a different, unique way in their own settings most of the time. And we also have a system of care wraparound. We have advisory committees that are looking at barriers to care. So we are pushing forward some of those barriers that come up during the advisory committees that we work with, and put in place mechanisms or systems that would wrap around them. And that's my phone.
You're allowed.
I could have sworn I put it on silent. All right. Any questions on any of the programs that we have? Yeah. So for the changes that we expect in the coming year, Eve mentioned our efforts at implementing mobile crisis. So we have new rules, new mandates from the state to have mobile crisis services accessible to all residents of Lane County. In the past, we have had some form of mobile crisis response, but that has just been more specific in the metro areas. So the mandate is to ensure that we have mobile crisis services across the county, that everybody across the county has access to that. This also comes under the umbrella of the SAMHSA model, the Crisis Now model. A lot of you have heard me talk about the Crisis Now model in the context of the Stabilization Center. So the SAMHSA model has the 3 stools, a place to call, so that's 988, a team to get to you when you're in distress, so that's the mobile crisis, and a place to go. A place to stabilize, so that would be the stabilization center. So the Crisis Now has those three stools, and that's what we are trying to implement. So the mobile crisis is the second part of that stool. For your awareness, we are starting off this program way underfunded. So the way we are looking at implementing this is to start with peak hours, looking at where the volumes are and focusing our attention on those providing services during those hours, because we don't have funding to cover 24/7, which is what the requirements are from the state. We eventually hope to be able to do that, but the funding we have currently only allows us to cover certain shifts. So we're gonna start with, I believe, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. And as we get more funding, then we'll add more services for mobile crisis. We are also working with subcontractors, looking at how we do this and how we ensure that we meet the compliance as part of the new rules and as required from the state. And it's also a federal requirement. So working through all those pieces, making sure that we have the right services and also in compliance with the feds and the state. The other change that we are going to see is an Aid and Assist Community Navigator pilot that is also going to be funded through the state. And the goal here for the Aid and Assist is to move people from the state hospital into community setting. One of our challenges in Lane County is that we are second in the state in terms of the numbers of people at the state hospital, despite the many attempts and rules that have come down to manage or limit the number of people we are sending at the state. That number has not reduced for Lane County. We are still maintaining a pretty high number of people at the state hospital. So the state has identified a few counties, one of which is Lane County, to have these very intensive pilots to see how we get people out of the state hospital. So it'll be very intense. And the way they are looking at modeling this is having a team that has a very few people, about 15 at most, that they're constantly following and coordinating with the state hospital, and then once they're out in the community, that it's consistency in managing and making sure that they're connected, they're following through, that we don't have this repeat back and forth at the state hospital. One of the challenges with that, I think the program is great, but I think we are also challenged with the fact that we don't have adequate resources for people. I think that's our biggest challenge and the elephant in the room. So we can hire all these positions, and I think it's great to focus on a small number of people just to get to know them, get to know what their needs are, having that consistency in the and engagement and rapport with the people that they are working with. But essentially, we have to have housing, we have to have treatment options for people, and I think that's where we are really, really limited, and the reason why we haven't made a dent in the number at the state hospital in Lane County. So the more we can build those resources, I think we'll eventually see that shift. But until then, I think our numbers at the state hospital will continue to be what they are. But we are willing and coordinating and collaborating with the state on this pilot project that was funded through the last, not this short session, but this session before. So we have funding to just hone on a few folks that we can get out of the state hospital. Key initiatives, we have mobile crisis, that's our biggest. I think one of our challenges there is going to be staffing. We also are in a very acute workforce shortage, as you all know, but we are slowly making a dent. We do have a few applicants, but the biggest challenge will be at the master level clinician, the QMHPs, qualified mental health professional, practitioner, that we are required to have as part of the team. The composition of the worker types have to have a QMHP level trained clinician, and we cannot find those. So I think that's where our biggest challenge falls. Can I ask just a quick question there? Is a QMHP just required to be part of the mobile crisis team, or is there need to be someone available anytime the service is operating? We need to have somebody available at all times, and a QMHP has to be available. They don't have to necessarily be on site, they don't have to respond, but they have to be available for consult. If there is an event that requires a more trained clinician, we have to have one available 24/7. So how many people with a QMHP certification is required to fully staff the program we're envisioning? Do you want to talk about that?
7. We need 7.
Thank you.
And we're already at a dearth. I mean, we already need more beyond that.
We already need more beyond that. We actually have, we are currently shorthanded at the clinic itself. Just for the clinic-based work, we have maybe 5 vacancies that we haven't been able to.
Got 9.
9. Wow. We have 9 vacancies that we haven't been able to fill just at the clinic-based QMHP. So if you think about that work compared to the work that we will be asking folks to do for mobile crisis, it's more intense, and it will require really people who want to do this work, and they're far and in between. Thank you.
Does a QMHP have to be working 24/7, or can this be like an on-call thing?
I think both. I mean, we would have to have somebody, if you're on call, you'd have to be available to respond, because that's the challenge of it, and there's the crisis line component. So being on call looks different right now. We do have some QMHPs who are on call who provide support, but in terms of then also being dispatched, if you're located here in Eugene, but you have to be in Oak Ridge, or you have to be in Florence, or you have to be somewhere. So it's about dispatch time as well, how quickly we have to respond.
Okay, so they're not just
They're not just sitting
They're not
somewhere
just
chilling. No,
They can't just be
they may have, they could be.
like.
They could be. Some of the work is gonna be doing that, and some of that work is actually going out and making a clinical assessment. So like if a director's custody needed to be placed, they are the only folks that are qualified to do that work. So they have to go out, they have to make an assessment whether or not that person's a danger to themselves or others, sign the form, and then have law enforcement transport. So there's components of the work that may require them, we believe, to be out based on how we understand mobile crisis work.
Gotcha. Yeah, 7 seems like a big number.
That's for the
unless you're-
24/7 when we're
Unless
fully
you're
operating.
operating 24/7
Yeah.
instead of having like an on-call program.
So given those parameters and staffing levels that you're gonna need, and you said that you wanted to try to plug in to some degree of the highest hours of demand, where do you plug in at and for how long? I mean, do you plug in the midnight shift, the midnight to 8 a.m. shift, or, I mean, where is it we start the program when we're so woefully underfunded and woefully understaffed for the
Right.
short term?
So the numbers, based on the evidence that we've been able to gather through law enforcement, the hospital, gathering information from community partners who are doing light work, right now we're starting with a 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. That is where peak hours are being seen. And then actually the next shift would be adding a 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift. That's where the next amount of calls are out. And then actually the decrease, where they see a decrease in actual call outs, are that overnight shift. So that will be our the last part that we would add, just based on the data. And this is a pilot, this first year is a pilot, so we're really gonna actually get to gather some realistic data, because we don't have data for a lot of our surrounding communities, a lot of the rural areas that we're going to be doing a lot more in-reach to, that don't typically call for these types of services, but now that they're available and we're gonna have folks nearby, we anticipate we're going to see an increase in what that looks like, so.
So we also determined, if we also budgeted out how many vans for the mobile crisis that we've bought, and then it sounds to me like maybe we're gonna be able to staff one of those, and we've bought in how many?
We've purchased 6 so far, and we anticipate, in order to even run that 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, we have to be positioned and to respond within the response time that's necessary as a requirement of the legislation. We have to have those 7 vans up and running, 6 vans up and running to start, so.
Which requires how many total staff? I'm curious, just to start.
Two per van, 2 people per van.
14 people we need right away before we can get our feet wet.
Supervisor plus our QMHPs.
And 7 days a week.
And
so
7
it's
days a
more
week.
than just.
30 people give or take. I mean, am I math checking out here?
In the ballpark.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Wow.
Yeah.
Big wave to surf.
Yeah.
Given we know it's gonna be challenging to hire, what do you think the timeline is? Are you hiring now? You are, so, and knowing that you need a minimum qualified amount of staff of all these different levels, are we looking out 6 months, or what is the timeline looking practically like before we can get it off the ground?
The hope is we're having a lot more success with those QMHA and those peer support. So those are the people that are on the vans. And so that's good news, because we'll be able to get people on the vans. And then there's people like Dr. Kishoyi, myself, who also will be doing some supervision, because we're both QMHPs and practitioners. So we're really getting creative to look at how quickly we can get something up off the ground. And we're really hoping to have at least a couple of vans up and going by July 1.
Oh, wonderful.
Fingers crossed. So we did a relaunch of all of our positions this last week, and actually HR is supposed to have, I think, our last ones up tomorrow. So we're then doing a big push again to push those out. But like I said, the peer support specialists, we had some just really exceptional candidates, same thing at the QMHA level, which is exciting because those are the folks who are going to be those initial responders. So that's been really exciting to get those folks. But QMHPs, since COVID, QMHPs have just been kind of a decimated pool of folks, so it's been really hard to build in those, get those positions. But this is something new, it's exciting, it's different. There's definitely people, I came from the crisis workforce, so there's definitely those of us who really enjoy that type of work, the variety, the sort of intensity of the work. So they're out there, we just have to get them to Lane County.
And just very quickly, I fear that there aren't enough in the state to fill the needs. And that points out another problem is that the accreditation process that we have, which is laborious, expensive, slow, and if at some point we need to advocate for a different form of certification process that allows people to maybe get on the job certified as opposed to going to school to get certified and then come into the job. But that's a long and very different conversation. My other question is regarding the mobile crisis. Where does public safety fall into that, public safety uniformed officers? I mean, do they have to be there?
They don't have to be there all the time. So there are times that we will need, if it's a situation where there is potential safety concerns, then we will need to have peace officers responding with us. But generally, so the way this is going to work out, we have the calls, people will call or will get routed through 988 or 911, and most research shows that you're often able to de-escalate somebody very easily over the phone. So there are a few times that we need to go out and respond to people. And as you're screening the individual, you can tell between us and law enforcement, you can tell a situation that requires peace officers to be the first responders versus behavioral health responders being the first responders. So we're going to be triaging to determine who is the best person to respond to it. So the intent is to have behavioral health professionals respond to a behavioral health distress when feasible at all times, but when there is a safety component, we will definitely be needing to respond with an officer.
And in situations that can escalate unexpectedly.
Correct.
So you have to have somebody on call, which makes it difficult if you're out a few miles past Walton. It's easier at 9th and Willamette, but when and this countywide 24/7 mandate from the state, without any real means to make it happen, it really is. It's just another indication that the state is just a little bit out of touch with what really happens on the ground.
Well, there's 10 hours a day that there isn't a sheriff west of Walton. So then what do you do?
Right. Well, this is a pilot. We are trying to, to get out there and see what's going to be really realistic and practical and safe. And we've also been partnering a lot with law enforcement partners. They've been doing this for the most part, so we want to learn. We want to come alongside them to say, what have you noticed? What are the areas or issues that we need to be aware of? We've also been going to the rural communities and just talking with the members, the community members. What are your needs? What do you see? What do we need to know before we venture into your community? So we are also learning a lot from our community partners and what to be aware of and what to know coming into these spaces.
And by all accounts, you're doing the very best you can with the resources that you have available.
We're trying.
But once again, it's a pilot. And we heard this from parole and probation. They have a pilot also. So they're throwing out pilots where we have to put entire operations into existence in a pilot mode. And is it a 2-year pilot?
We are calling it a pilot by the state. We are supposed to be doing this. It's supposed to have been a service that we are providing to people. But they've been understanding, one, that there's a workforce crisis, and secondly, that we are not funded to be doing 24/7. So I think they are willing to work with us. There really isn't this is the deadline, although there's an expectation that we have a service by July 1, whether or not that will be countywide or some type of service. They are understanding that we have constraints, but we are trying. We'll do the best we can.
And something that we'll be looking at far beyond the budget process, that this is something the board will be looking at all along. Thank you for really answering that question. You kind of eased my mind a little bit just with your response to the questions. Thank you, Olivia.
And we'll be, of course, coming back to the board on June 4th. I know that we just have a couple of minutes left before the end of our time, so Dr. Gishohi can quickly zoom through the other big initiatives that we're focused on and working on. And as you have additional questions that come up around mobile services, if you send them to us, we can make sure that we have good answers or incorporate them into our presentation on June 4th as well.
So the only big one, you're all familiar with the Crisis Stabilization Center, that's still in the works. The other one I want to call out is an expansion for the medication-assisted treatment into Florence. So we are exploring that. I think it's a much-needed service there. The state has been really wanting us to explore and expand that service. As Eve mentioned, that is a program that is revenue generating for us. So we are looking to hopefully have that up and running by next year. So we're in the exploration stage. There are grants out there to startup grants to get this work going. And it's not going to be as in-depth as the clinic we have on West 11. It's going to be much smaller, and we can use resources out of the West 11 to be able to do a satellite clinic in Florence.
I'm really thrilled to hear that, and I'm really curious. This may be a in the future report back, but I'm expecting we might see a much older population. I mean, there's an entire generation of people who are addicted to opioids on doctor's orders.
Right.
It's not just folks who are sort of partying or numbing their experience of mental illness or homelessness. They're people who, were in a car accident and prescribed opioids and no pain management or off ramp. And are now aging into being for decades now on opioids. And given the demographics of that community, I'll be really curious to see.
They will be reporting back for sure.
Yeah. Great. That's great.
Future challenges, opportunities, as I mentioned earlier, gaps in the crisis continuum of care. There's not enough resources for the people that we are serving. And we're going to see a lot more of that as we implement or launch our mobile crisis. Again, I think that's where we see a lot of kind of more moral injury when folks are working with individuals and they don't have services for them. They stabilize them, and then there is no pathway for treatment for people. Workforce is huge. We are continuously being asked to expand services because of the ever-increasing needs for behavioral health. We don't have enough housing, residential treatment. Treatment in general for folks is not adequate. And as we mentioned, underfunded and unfunded mandates. The opportunities, we're doing a lot of advocacy work with the state through the Association of Oregon Counties as well, to just make sure that there is an understanding of the core services that we are required to have and the funding that we need to do this work. So this session we have had a bill that passed to cost out the mandated services. So OHA is required to do an analysis of the cost of serving folks, and that will be very informative to actually see where we are and the funding that we need to do the mandated services that we provide as a county mental health program. And I'll stop there. I'm sorry we took all the time, but if there's any quick questions, we will take those, and if there are others, we will be happy to send back questions, answers to questions.
Maybe not a quick question, but maybe you might want to take with you is how much is the unfunded mandate demands that we're trying to spread things really, really thin, taking away from other things that we could do much better that may move the needle further than us trying to spread the butter too thin?
$7 million.
How much?
$7 million, which, funny enough, is our deficit.
Is your deficit? Yes. What a coincidence.
What a coincidence. Yes. And we are also, with mobile crisis, we took the allowance in the CFAA agreement to not provide the full mandated service. And we have notified the state that it is underfunded, which is our obligation through our contract, is to notify them that it's underfunded. But it is no longer our obligation to provide the service if it's underfunded. We are trying not to do that with the folks who are at the intersection of public safety and behavioral health, because we don't believe that it's in our community's best interest to walk away from those services. However, there are budgetary realities that we are facing over the coming years. And we are, we will continue our advocacy at the state level, but these conversations might get much harder as we move forward.
So were these services that were prior to taken care of by the state that now they're pushing on the counties generally, or is it just expanded services because we live in a very different world now?
So I would go back to saying that behavioral health has never been adequately funded, and especially with deinstitutionalization, it was just releasing people and never actually funding the services that we needed in order to treat people ethically in a deinstitutionalized setting. So that's my perspective, if you have anything to add.
No, it is true. So when we deinstitutionalized people, the goal was to move money to communities, but that never happened. So we reduced number of beds and number of facilities, the institutions, but that money never made it to the communities. So we have seen more and more people coming into communities without the resources to support them in communities. The intention was good. There was a reason why we moved from deinstitutionalizing people, but there was no follow through with then what? It was not well funded, and it's been decades of that we are coming after to try to right size, but it will take a while before we get there because it's been decades and decades of not funded.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor, for those and you for those hard answers, but it's what it is. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So thank you for
even though you asked to
putting it
fix
on the table.
Even though you asked them to fix it earlier.
I just suppose.
Maybe next year.
You have 6 months.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
All 4 chairs are open.
Oh, all 4 chairs are open. Sit up there, do we?
Well, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Here we go again.
Here we go again for the very last time.
I wasn't going to say that, but you did, so that's good.
Some of us are dancing a little jig in our heads right now.
Anyway, but we're ready to go if you guys are.
All right, so I'm just gonna blow through the slides and talk about the challenges. First off, today started with a water leak from the ceiling of the 4th floor right outside the ADA accessible bathroom and went all the way to the 1st floor. I don't know if it made it to the basement. So when we get to our facility being a challenge, just picture that. DA's office is made up of criminal prosecution is the thing that people generally think about when they think about a district attorney's office. We handle about 5,500 cases referred to us by all the law enforcement agencies in Lane County. We do all of the felonies and the misdemeanors for the sheriff's office and the state police. Death investigations, that's probably the biggest challenge to my office because costs are uncontrollable and the number of people in our county who are dying continues to rise. Family law is easy walk in the park. It's 60% grant funded, other than the fact that a legal secretary gave notice by email on Saturday that she was resigning effective Monday. Everything is pretty stable there. Support services, which covers victim services and the clerical support. Victim services also fairly self-sustaining. We've been violating constitutional and statutory law for the last couple of years by not having a victim advocate out at juvenile. That position was at youth services and then wasn't filled. So that position has been moved to my budget. I don't know if this budget reflects that. Yes, this budget reflects that. And we have people in background for the 2 victim advocate positions. We serve 100% of victims. We meet our stats every year on making sure that we are supporting and enforcing the rights of victims. Our resources are mostly general fund. I mean, that's the bulk of it. We have grants that cover domestic violence investigator. We have the grants that cover family law. We have grants that cover victim services from Val and Boca. We get discovery fees. That's going to be something that the legislature is going to be addressing because they do a lot of cost shifting, and so it costs $350,000 for us to provide discovery through having the staff and doing the work for it. Discovery is every defendant is entitled to all of the materials we have that we'd be using at trial or anything that might be exculpatory for them. And we have been recouping about $315,000 of that through our discovery fees. Although Lane County is one of the most expensive, what we charge for discovery to the State Office of Public Defense is some of the highest in the state. So the legislature is looking at that. Office of Public Defense doesn't think that they should have that come out of their budget, even though it's a line item in their budget that includes the cost of Lane County. So those are things that we're going to have to be looking at and prepared for making sure that we get to keep that coverage or adjust if the legislature does another cost shift for us. And grant revenues are holding steady currently, which is good. We had a grant that covered our traffic investigator whose responsibility was to go out and do follow-up on fatal crashes, which you've probably heard we have a lot of here. And then he was going out and doing a lot of arrests of people who failed to appear in court for DUI crimes, and then going out and getting video from doing follow-up investigation. That grant ran out a couple of years ago, and the county picked up the position, fully funding it. It was a step-down grant and then continued to fund it. That position is going out of our budget this year. Our expenditures, our share of expenditures are high. We have death investigations in the public service building, and because that building is mostly empty, we pick up a greater proportion of the cost of, I don't know, rent, utilities, maintenance, whatever it is. And of the things that we can't control in our budget, I mentioned death investigations. Morgue supplies are increasing, the cost of them. Body transports. There is only one company that's doing that with us. It's not, a field that there's a lot of competition in. And so we negotiated a contract with them a couple of years ago for a flat fee dependent upon the distance that they were traveling. But the number of people who are dying and having to be transported to the morgue, it has been fluctuating and increasing, and so those costs are going up. The death investigators are asking to be unionized, And it looks like that's going to happen, that they're going to join AFSCME, in which case we will be, right now they're exempt. You work a 60-hour week, you work a 60-hour week. But once they are unionized, we'll have to provide comp time and a one-to-one for the time that they work over a 40-hour week. And then we have, of course, the AFSCME is all of the victim advocates and the clerical staff in the DA's office, and then the lawyers, the Prosecuting Attorneys Association, are in bargaining. So those are costs that are not present in our budget. This is stuff that we do, and I would like to move beyond stuff that we do. You have a copy of that slide, and I think you have a pretty good idea of, I've already described most of the things that we do. There are a lot of things that are encompassed in each of these areas, particularly in criminal prosecution, that are not the traditional going to court and trying a case. I mentioned in there, we do search warrant review for law enforcement. Our judges all expect that every search warrant that comes to them has been reviewed by a lawyer in my office. We do a lot of things that the legislature has gifted to us and that the appellate courts have gifted to us, like retrying cases because they didn't have a unanimous jury in 1997, back when it was constitutional to have a 10-person jury on those cases. There are some other reviews. We've had a tremendous increase in expungements or set-asides. The legislature has made it so that we take on all of those responsibilities. There's an extra help lawyer who is retired out of the office who's doing the bulk of that work with a paralegal. And I'll just mention, I started in 1990. There were at least 5 more prosecutors in the office at that time than there are now. Yeah, there are 3 of us retiring, and I guess it's 102 years of experience that will be walking out the door in the next 3 months in our office. So that leaves a big gap. Bob Lane, it's 38 years he's been here. He's the person I go to when I have questions about, just everybody has questions, even I do. And Eric Hasselman, who's been one of the heavy-hitter trial lawyers in the office on the major, both of them have been on the major crimes team handling a bulk of the child abuse cases for the last 20 years. The work has changed dramatically over the course of my career. When I started, we had district court. It was a training ground, and then you went to circuit court. And now everybody's piled in together. The rules are changing constantly, and there's body cam footage and video footage everywhere. And every case has that, and now people are having to go through it and figure out what's relevant in it. So fortunately, we have added paralegals to the teams to help manage the trial work and the evidence preparation. And I already talked about the other stuff. Family law, great. Don't have to worry about it. More family law, everything. The only thing I would mention about that is fewer people are taking advantage of the service of having their child support orders enforced. And so one of the things we are talking about is making sure we're doing more outreach in the community to let people know, particularly people who don't speak English, that that service is available to them. It's a lot of work, and everybody's great. The key initiatives that are coming up, the deflection program is Chris's bailiwick. That is the Measure 110 reform bill. Crime victim services, we are constantly working to make sure that we are providing the services that people need and making sure that we are fulfilling our obligations to the victims of crime. in Lane County. I've touted our specialty courts over the course of my career here. I don't know that anybody doesn't know that I am a huge fan of our treatment courts, drug treatment court, veterans court, mental health court. I did not get a DUI court in my tenure here. That's something that I was unable to achieve because I don't control that, the court does. But Chris is a huge proponent of these other alternatives. We've had some challenges in getting people into programs because of pretrial release legislation that the legislature gifted us last long session, that people are being released from custody with no conditions so they don't show up to court. We can't get them clean long enough to get them to go into treatment. But that impacts one of our grant-funded programs, not so much our specialty courts. Child support's great. We would like to create an informational dashboard, and that is turning out to be a challenge. But, you know, I've come in here over the past, I mean, this is number 9, I think, and, you know, people ask questions about who we're prosecuting and all, and it's hard for us to drill that down and present it in a meaningful way. And it's hard, honestly, working with the website we have and the technology that we have access to provide that. But that's going to be one of Chris's initiatives. And then finally, the Public Safety Task Force, which I am putting great hope and optimism that that group of people, who appear to be a very smart group of people, are going to figure out how to adequately fund public safety in this community. Okay, yes, we're having leadership change in the office, and so we will have some inexperienced lawyers in the office who will need some additional support. We have inexperienced deputy DAs currently, but we've had some great hires. 3 lawyers came in with a minimum of 10 years of experience. You know, replacing Angela. I don't know how many of you have had any contact or worked with Angela, but your staff here and every department here has had interaction with her, and she's leaving. And leaving some huge shoes to fill, and nobody else knows how to do all the things. And so, there are lots of challenges. I mean, there are just so many things that we can't predict accurately. I mean, I was asked in 2023, why do you need so much money for expert witnesses when you didn't use any last year? Well, we didn't have any trials in 2020, 2021. We were barely getting started in 2022. I've signed, I don't know how many $20,000 and $30,000 invoices for expert witnesses in the last year. I mean, every serious case has to have experts, and they cost a lot of money. Every case, almost every case, has some aspect of drug-induced psychosis that you have to drill down to whether it is drug-induced psychosis or if it's an actual organic mental illness. Because the consequence of making the wrong decision in there on a really violent, serious case is the person goes to what's called the Psychiatric Security Review Board for the control of where they're going to live, what they're going to do. And if you got that wrong, that person just gets released. They don't have a mental illness. It was a drug-induced psychosis, and so we don't have any reason to keep them under our jurisdiction any longer. And somebody who killed people is, without supervision, walking the streets scot-free. So there are a lot of things that we need to get right, and it's expensive. There's a lot there. Anyway, and finally, I guess conference space. Our facility is really sad. I mean, the water leak this morning aside, we have a need for more personnel if there ever were more money for more personnel from this public safety task force coming up with brilliant ideas that the community will support. But we don't have the physical space to put more people. It's just an artificial limitation on our ability to expand. But we also don't have a place where we can meet as a group without going to somebody else's office space, technology service conference room or the PC classroom. We have our little library and our little conference room, which doubles as the staff break room, and this little sad, dirty kitchenette from the cabinets and all of that went in whenever the cafeteria left, which is when the public safety or the public service building opened. So Chris has dreams of cleaning out this room at the back of victim services and turning it into a conference room. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I would hope that we would have better office space than that dark, dank file room to become our conference space, only my carring space. I don't know. So I think that concludes. I mean, you know what our budget is. You know how much it costs to run the things that are present in the proposed budget. It's a lot of guesswork on some areas with regard to witness fees and dead bodies. And we are offering up a significant cut in losing the position of an investigator. So I hope you remember that going forward in the future, that maybe we could pick something, pick a lawyer somewhere, paralegal, somebody. Questions?
Questions?
I just have one, and it's, boy, I don't even know how to ask this. Death investigations as part of the DA's office. Is that something that's common?
It is all over the map, all over the state. Different counties do it differently. The smaller counties do not do it that way at all. In some counties, it's in the sheriff's office. Ideally, from my perspective, from my perspective, it would be in Health and Human Services, so that real-time data of who's dying when and where would be available to public health. So that instead of being responsive, we could actually be a little bit more proactive in trying to stop the suicides and the drug overdoses and the car crashes and the homicides that we've been seeing, just the numbers going up over the last few years. And particularly suicide, in my mind, is something that, and car crashes, we should be able to get out in front of that a little bit better through public health. And the other issue is my office has an actual conflict in having death investigations in the office. We have a circumstance right now where the county is being sued, where the death investigators are housed in my office. They report to the state medical examiner, the forensic pathologist, and the lawyer in my office had a different conclusion than they did. And so now the investigators and my lawyer are at odds with the state on, cause and manner of death and whether there was a criminal aspect to it. And that just shouldn't happen. And if you want to ask any questions about money, Becca's here.
Any other questions? Comments?
Chris, if you need help painting that new conference room, I can help.
Perfect, we'll take you up on that.
Just thank DA Furlow for your many years. This is your last time before us in this particular setting. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And Angela, for you too, as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
I'm doing my roadshow of lasts now.
All right, and then we're on the ballot for doing stuff, right?
Yes.
But I know, I mean, it's pretty obvious. So that's,
Yeah, if you want a deflection program, it's not gonna be me.
Any other comments? Anybody else wants to make? Chris? Or? No? Okay. Well, again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick,
Happy
get you back on
retirement.
time.
Happy retirement to both of you.
Hey, thank you. I'm getting an A+.
Retirement.
In retirement.
Isn't that what she's doing?
She sounds like she's got a foot out the door.
All right, do we have committee business, Christine?
I know she does.
We do not have anything other than what you have, the minutes that everyone
Which we'll do next
received. You
time.
may well receive some additional emailed minutes. Jason sends those out.
Okay.
So maybe be on the watch for those, just as he's getting them done. He's working away.
Cool. So then that's, we're doing well. So that's probably it for today. And I think we're back at 1 o'clock. Herb, 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock
Sorry.
on Thursday.
Hey, Herb,
On Thursday. He had it on the calendar.
Yeah.
Herb, I had it down for I have it down for 1:32. I just happened to watch everybody walk in the room. I'm like, what's going on in there?
Sorry, Herb.
I did just think of one thing, sorry, that I meant to mention, was that you remember on your agenda on Thursday, there is a space if the committee wanted to hear about anything else. So if that is the case, we would need to know ASAP, so that it takes a while to prepare. But so we haven't heard anything from you. So right now, there is a couple presentations scheduled, and then quite a bit of time for the committee to talk about what deliberation looks like. We kind of go through that process. If there's any proposals from the budget committee, what that process looks like. So we'll cover that.
That's not that Thursday, that's a follow-up.
Thursday, yeah, so we talk about it the Thursday beforehand, kind of set up those deadlines for getting.
That is this
to us.
Thursday coming.
Sorry.
Yes,
And it's gonna be
Thursday coming
Wednesday.
is, this Thursday coming is our final meeting, and
Yes,
then we have
and then talking
Wednesday
about next
evening.
Wednesday. Yes, exactly, yes.
All right. I think we're adjourned.
No, I'm just body language. It's good. Go,
All right.
Chair.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.